The City FM Literacy Challenge is back. Are you a JHS student? Are you willing to contribute to change? What would you do if you were the president of Ghana? Do you want to win a whopping 10,000 Ghana cedis? If yes, then participate in the Literacy Challenge 2018. Level 1. The year is 2035. The law allows people below age 40 to contest the presidency. As a presidential candidate in a general election, in no less than 600 words, write your manifesto speech. Remember, letter must be in your own handwriting, must be endorsed by a parent or guardian, add your full contact details, and post to the Literacy Challenge, P.O. Box GP 14123 Accra Central, or drop it off at the front desk of City FM at the Braka behind the police station. Level 2. The top 50 students selected from all over Ghana shall take a written general knowledge quiz. And finally, Level 3. The top 10 students shall compete in the classic quiz competition to win the ultimate prize of 10,000 Ghana cedis. The Literacy Challenge is powered by 97.3 City FM and sponsored by Data Bank Edifund and MoneyGram with support from City TV. Closing date for entries is Friday, 10th August 2018. Call 0205-973-973 for more inquiries. Terms and conditions apply.
Live music, interviews, poetry, and more with your favorite personalities. Be our guest on Saturdays from 2 to 4 p.m. for the most exciting moments on TV. Join Kojo Akoto Boateng for real entertainment right in your living room. Saturday Live on City TV and City 97.3 FM.
Wherever the weekend sporting action happened, we will bring it to you here on Scorecard. Every goal, every dunk, every punch, the winning strides, and the winning volleys.
Come international media, he said, look, wait, sit and wait. Let me have a meal with my people. And I think that's the same cool, it's the same organization he brings to the field every time I've seen him play. He looks to me like somebody who has played over 50 caps already. Okay. But this guy has barely played over 25 caps for the national team.
All of the weekend's action in one place. Scorecard, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. prompt on City TV.
Hi, good morning. You're welcome to The Big Issue. The Big Issue is live on 97.3 City FM and on City TV. We are also live around the globe at citynewsroom.com. And we are also on Facebook Live. My name is Selorm Adonoo. This week has seen some seismic occurrences on the banking scene. The Bank of Ghana revoked the licenses of some 5 indigenous banks. The central bank subsequently set up the entity it now calls the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. That bank is supposed to receive some selected assets and liabilities of the collapsed banks and also receive all depositors' money. Indeed, it has become the go-to bank for all customers of those 5 collapsed banks. This morning we asked the question, what was a regulator doing all this while when these banks were struggling? Were they sleeping on the job? What happens to the directors of these collapsed banks? What should customers of these banks do? We have some analysis on this matter for you. Also, we want to look at the Ameri deal once more. This week, reliable sources tell us that the president was misled into granting approval for the deal. The approval enabled the ministry or the Minister for Energy to table the amended agreement before Parliament. Fortunately or unfortunately, Parliament could not fully consider it because the minority raised some legal issues, among which include the fact that the Attorney General had to give a final legal opinion on the agreement. and also the finance minister, according to law, had to provide some approval or give a letter to seal that particular deal. Now that we're hearing that the president has been misled, at least from sources, we ask, what becomes of the man or the people who misled the president? And is it possible that the president might have been misled on many of such deals in the past? We will bring all these to you. We will also look at the politics of the NDC. The biggest opposition party this week announced that its flag bearer aspirants can now go around openly to campaign. But that is not just it. There's been some occurrences in that party. Two bigwigs, that is Ken Jirasa and Victor Beho, have thrown their weight behind Professor Joshua Alabi, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra, in that race as against former President John Dramani Mahama. What will this latest wave of endorsement mean for the Mahama camp? Indeed, mind you, Mahama has not expressly declared that he is contesting, though his utterances in the last couple of weeks or days suggest that he may run. The other persons in the race include Sylvester Mensah, former Chief Executive Officer of the National Health Insurance Authority, Honorable S.K. Babin, who is currently the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and one other person whose name I'll bring to you shortly. I invite you to join the discussion on 020549 986 996. That's on WhatsApp, on social media. Just ensure that your comments have the hashtag the big issue, and then we'll read those comments to the rest of the world. Once again, this is the big issue. I'll return, introduce my guest, and we'll do some updates and delve into the discussion proper. You're welcome. Call a friend to tell a friend that the big discussion is on here at the big issue on 97.3 City FM and on City TV. Stay tuned in. You're welcome back to the big issue. We are live on 97.3 City FM and on City TV. We are also on Facebook Live, and around the globe we are at citynewsroom.com. The big issue is your most preferred Saturday morning news and current affairs analysis show. Now, the Bank of Ghana has consolidated 5 local banks into what it calls the Consolidated Bank, painted a picture as though they could meet the new capital requirement. Dr. Addison, however, assured clients of the affected banks that their monies are safe.
To support the government's twin objective of financial stability and strengthening indigenous banks, the Bank of Ghana is consolidating the good assets and liabilities of Unibank Ghana Limited, the Royal Bank Limited, the Beige Bank Limited, Sovereign Bank Limited, and the Construction Bank Limited to become the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited with immediate effect. The bank has approved Mr. Daniel Addo as the new Chief Executive of the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. In addition, the government has appointed the following as the key management people to support in transitioning into the new established Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. They are Mr. Selorm Adonoo, who would be the Consolidated Bank Director in charge of Unibank, Mr. Alex Dodu, Consolidated Bank Director in charge of Royal, Ms. Kesua Brown, Consolidated Bank Director in charge of Construction Bank, Mr. Babatunde Ampa, Consolidated Bank Director in charge of Page Bank, and Boulders Advisors Limited, led by Mr. Reggie France, as advisor to the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. The Bank of Ghana has also appointed Mr. Nidodu Amano of KPMG as the receiver in respect of the bad loan assets of the 5 banks under Section 123 of the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions 2016, that is Act 930.
The governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, also announced the issuance of a 5.7 billion cedi bond as financial support for the new bank.
The government has also issued a bond of 5.76 billion cedis to cover the gap between the liabilities and good assets assumed by the consolidated bank. The consolidated bank, Ghana Limited, is expected to play a strategic role in the transformational agenda of the government. This provision is part of a fund set up by the government to help address all the legacy problems in the financial sector. Going forward, the Bank of Ghana will continue to strengthen its regulatory and supervisory framework and promote confidence in the financial system through the introduction of the Basel Regulatory Capital Requirements Directives, review of guidelines, directives, and regulations to the industry, banks and specialized deposit taking institutions Act, that is the Act 930, rollout of the Basel II and III supervisory framework, and ensure implementation of IFRS 9 by banks, full implementation of the new minimum capital requirements for banks by the end of the year, strictly enforce fit and proper guidelines for shareholders, directors, and key management personnel of banks and SDIs, as well as other supervised non-bank financial institutions.
So that was the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison. Now, the banking sector is here to overcome challenges that have saddled it over the last 1 year. The Bank of Ghana is bent on sanitizing the industry to make it stronger. But this has left in its wake other teething issues that pose a great threat to the economy if not properly managed. In this report, Pius Ameri Eduku analyzes the impact of the central bank's new approach and the future of the country's banking sector.
It all started with a recapitalization of commercial banks in August last year. Existing banks as well as new entrants are expected to increase their minimum capital from 120 to 400 million cedis, a decision the banks are expected to comply with by December 31, 2018. While the Bank of Ghana licensed 3 banks, i.e. the Construction Bank, the Beige Bank and GHL Bank last year, it collapsed 2 others, UT and Capital Banks, which have since been absorbed by GCB Bank. The move left about 800 jobs off the market, with more expected to join. But it will emerge that this is the beginning of the troubles for the banking industry. Fast forward to 2018 and local banks petitioned President Akufo-Addo for an extension of the December 31 deadline by 4 more years to 2022. Though a committee was formed on this appeal, the outcome of their work is yet to be known. The central bank has on several occasions insisted it will not extend the deadline for the minimum capital. The Bank of Ghana's banking sector reports for May this year put total assets of banks at 97.7 billion cedis as at April this year. Similarly, the bank's paid-up capital, which refers to the amount invested by shareholders, increased from 4.57 to 5.22 billion cedis. The non-performing loans, however, increased to 8.63 billion cedis in April this year from 8.2 billion cedis as at December last year. Even though measures taken by the Bank of Ghana to trim the number of banks in the country could trigger other complications such as job losses running into thousands of people, economist Dr. Ebo Texin maintains the current cost is rather less than the impact in the future.
We should seem to be supporting such initiatives that might come with some costs. In fact, if banks merge and there's a slash down on employment, it meant that some of the banks will even employ much more than they should have. And one thing about these banks that we have is that even their top management, the salaries that some of them receive is way beyond the industry acceptable levels. So you see, people are putting their monies into the banks, and the banks are supposed to lend, and the amount of operating cost alone is part of the reason why some of these banks are in the situation that they have.
Ghanaians have not been left out on the impact of the speculation within the banking industry.
But because of what we are hearing, that some banks can meet the minimum requirements and some banks are kind of going to merge, we don't really know what is happening. And so we are entertaining fear in opening account in any of the banks, the so-called local banks.
Some of the times, some of their customer service may not be good. So it will affect me at the side of customer service. Maybe I don't want that particular bank. And then, in some way that affects us.
But the questions bothering the minds of analysts are whether a country like Ghana, with a population of less than 30 million people, needs 34 banks to operate, at a time where countries like Nigeria and South Africa, with relatively higher population, have fewer banks. Ghana's banking industry will be an interesting space to watch over the next 5 months as the BOG gets tough with its regulations. For City News, Pius Ameri Eduku.
Well, and I am Selorm Adonoo. Now, the head of banking supervision at the Bank of Ghana, Osei JC, has told City News workers at the Bank of Ghana, particularly the banking supervision department, who are found to have been complicit in the collapse of the 5 banks, will be sanctioned. The Bank of Ghana said the insolvent banks obtained their licenses, at least some of them, using suspicious and non-existing capital. Speaking on the City Breakfast Show, Mr. JC admitted that the central bank has had challenges supervising the banking industry.
We've had challenges in supervising these banks, and some of the challenges are internal challenges with respect to forbearance, failure to enforce the law, and failure to enforce regulations. We're going to ensure that we go strictly by the law. We're going to ensure that where there's a need to sanction people, people will be sanctioned. And here I'm not talking about just people in terms of those who work in the commercial banks, the key management staff and the directors and employees. No, I'm also talking about those of us who work in the central bank, and especially those of us in the banking supervision department. We also have rules of conduct that we have to ensure that we comply with, and people whose behavior falls short of these rules will be sanctioned appropriately.
So you heard the head of banking supervision at the Bank of Ghana, Osei JC. Now to our other issue, which is on the Ameri Novation Agreement. The minority in Parliament is asking government to immediately suspend the Ameri Agreement or the Novation Agreement. According to former Deputy Power Minister John Jinapo, who spoke on behalf of the minority, the agreement is the worst ever tabled in the country's legislature. He contends it is not justified for government to push for a deal that will cost over $1 billion when the payment of $225 million in 2.5 months, the Ameri plan would have become the property of the state. Addressing the media, the Yape Kosegu MP indicated that the president has been complicit in the deal, especially after giving an executive approval to the Novation Agreement.
We therefore find it scandalous the attempt by President Akufo-Addo to introduce a third party known as Miscellaneous International Trading Company to assume ownership of the power plant at a proposed capacity charge of 3.8 US cents per kilowatt hour for 15 good years. When you translate this over the 15-year period, we'll be paying $1.035 billion US dollars when we are left with just 2.5 years to pay $255 million spread over the 2.5 years, and then we own the plant. And so the question is that, do you prefer to pay $255 million over 2.5 years and own the plant, or give the plant out? The person will own it for another 15 years, but you end up paying more than $1 billion United States dollars. If you convert it, you are talking of almost 5 billion Ghana cedis. President Akufo-Addo must be personally held liable and responsible for this scandal. The Minister of Energy couldn't have come here without approval from the President. And the President couldn't have given approval if he did not look into this. It therefore sums up that the President is very comfortable with this deal.
So you heard the Yape Kosegu MP and a former Deputy Minister for Power John Jinapo. Meanwhile, City News has gathered that government is planning to withdraw the agreement before Parliament. The move is to enable government make some changes to the deal before it will be put before Parliament again. This is expected to Parliament returns from recess. There is more in the following report by City News' Anita Atta. All right, so we will take a quick break. When we come back, we will look at that report. I will introduce my guests, and then we'll start the discussion. This is a big issue. Don't go anywhere.
For regular news checks as they unfold, 2020 news, all day, all the time. Politics, sports, entertainment, business, and more. 2020 news. We bring you the world in 20 minutes.
And that's all the news in 20 minutes.
Live music, interviews, poetry, and more with your favorite personalities. Be our guest on Saturdays from 2 to 4 p.m. for the most exciting moments on TV. Join Kojo Akoto Boateng for real entertainment right in your living room. Saturday Live on City TV and City 97.3 FM.
You're welcome back to the big issue. Just before we went on that break, we were to bring you a report by Anita Atta on the fact that government was planning to withdraw the Ameri Innovation Agreement from Parliament. Let's listen or have a look at that report.
The need for a review follows Parliament's inability to consider the amendments of the Ameri deal before rising for recess on Saturday, July 28. Addressing a press conference yesterday, a former Deputy Power Minister, John Jinapo, reiterated the concerns of critics, saying it is not justified for the government to push for a deal that would cost over $1 billion. Analysis indicates that the proposed amendments to the Ameri agreements will see a cash flow of $1.1 billion. But it is expected that the government would be paying a total of $1.37 billion for the Ameri power plants over approximately 18 years, instead of the original $510 million. The John Mahama administration in 2015 signed a contract with Africa and the Middle East Resources Investment Group, Ameri Energy, to rent the 300 megawatts of emergency power from Ameri. This was at the peak of the country's power crisis. Any decision taken by the government will feature prominently when Parliament resumes.
So that was Anita Atta's report. I invite you to join the discussion with your comments on WhatsApp on 0549986996, and on social media the hashtag is the big issue, and we're also on Facebook Live, so just drop your comments there and we'll be happy to read them out to the rest of the world. Now to my guest for this morning, lawyer Yao Opong, obviously a private legal practitioner and a law lecturer. Samuel Otri is a risk and banking analyst. Puma Emihe is a financial journalist who is no stranger to this show, I must add. Sydney Kesley-Hayford, member of Occupy Ghana and a financial analyst. Franklin Kujo is a member of Occupy, is a president of Imani Africa. So, gentlemen, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I want to start with you, Lawyer Pong. It was on Tuesday when the Bank of Ghana boss, Dr. Ernest Addison, met the press or the media and made the announcement on the collapse of the 5 banks. He said that the licenses of those 5 banks have been revoked, and a new entity called the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited set up, and that entity is being capitalized by some 450 million cedis to enable it to start operations. Did it come to you as a surprise, I mean, for starters?
Well, I mean, thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I'm not sure that I'll be able to say for certainty that I was surprised or I was not. But I think that will not matter now.
Yes.
What has happened has happened. But the Bank of Ghana basically relied on the new Act, Act 930, the Banks and Specialized Deposit Taking Institutions Act of 2016. And therefore, they have clothed their act with legality. And when you clothe your act with legality, it is that same source of legality that we look at and see whether or not you have also yourself, in fact, complied with both the procedure and the substance of the law. So we will have to then, unfortunately, I will have to sound legalistic a bit, as much as possible, and I will express my opinion in simple terms as I can manage.
Okay.
So Section 16 of the Act deals with revocation of license. Now, the Bank of Ghana may revoke a license issued under Section 16, under Section 12 of the Act, where, 1, the Bank of Ghana is satisfied that an applicant provided false, misleading, or inaccurate information in connection with the application for a license, or suppressed material information. B, the bank or specialized deposit taking institution fails to commence business within 1 year from the date the license was issued. C, the bank or specialized deposit taking institution fails to fulfill or comply with the terms and conditions stipulated in the license. D, the bank or specialized deposit taking institution carries on business in a manner which is contrary or detrimental to the interests of depositors or the public. I think this has been heard quite a lot in this situation. The bank or specialized deposit taking institution has been convicted by a domestic court. We can avoid that for present purpose. Or there is a judgment. In the judgment of the Bank of Ghana, the bank or specialized deposit taking institution engages in unsafe or unsound practices. Or G, the bank or specialized deposit taking institution persistently contravenes this act, the regulations, directives or orders made under this act. So these are the general parameters on which the Bank of Ghana may, relying on any of them, withdraw the license of any bank or specialized deposit taking institution that the bank had earlier on granted its license to engage in the general banking business. So then what we have to do now, in my view, is to now match
what the law is saying versus what the supposed breaches are.
But I will say that it is important for us to take each of them on case by case basis.
Okay.
And I will, if you could permit me, I will start from the bottom. So we have the Construction Bank Limited. It says at page 9, which is part of the schedule of the statement. I think what I'm having from you is authentic.
Yes, it is.
So I can rely on it. Yes.
It's very authentic.
Yes, I can rely on it. It said Construction Bank was licensed in May 2017 and commenced operations in December 2017. In the course of the official administration of Unibank, the Bank of Ghana discovered certain transactions involving Construction Bank. Further investigations revealed that the initial minimum paid-up capital of the bank provided by its promoter shareholder was funded by loans obtained from NIB, that's 34 million, and Unibank 61 million, contrary to Section 9D of Act 930. Now, before I move on, it is of public knowledge that Construction Bank was granted the initial license in 2016. This act, the specialized, Act 930, came into force in that year, but later, I think it was in December 2016. So let me just quickly confirm when it also came into force. Now, so obviously, that was 14 September 2016, and that was before. That was after the construction bank, in particular, had been issued with the initial license, what they call provisional license, and this is confirmed at page 2 of this statement that that was
but the statement said the construction bank was licensed in May 2017.
Yeah, but I'm saying
there was an initial.
But I'm saying that the initial license was granted
in 2016.
In 2016, before this act came into effect, and at that time, it was not inconsistent with any law. In other words, it was not illegal for any person, any bank or institution which had to comply with the Bank of Ghana Act then, or the Banking Act then, to source loans.
So
capitalize to meet the requirements.
Yeah. So the governor's statement made reference to the fact that the bank was funded by loans obtained from two banks, Unibank and then NIB, which was contrary to Section 9D of Act 930. And 9D says that the paid-up capital of the applicant is so that the Bank of Ghana is satisfied that the paid-up capital of the applicant is adequate and the original sources of capital are acceptable and do not include borrowed funds. That's what 9D says, on the basis of which the Bank of Ghana sought to, or actually revoked the license. One of those bases, I should say.
Okay, so page 2 says Big Bank and Construction Bank were each granted provisional licenses in 2016. Before you are granted provisional licenses, you should have made initial payment. And I'm saying that at that time, as far as I know,
the law, this law was
yes, at that time, this law was not in effect. So you cannot apply it retrospectively.
So at the time, they complied with the law. They complied with the law at the time.
There's law at the time.
Okay.
So you cannot apply it retrospectively to impose a liability or a limitation on anybody. Clearly contrary to Article 107B of the Constitution. So that's the first part. Okay, now then you have also, on that basis, you say that you have appointed a receiver under Section 123 of the Act. And that receiver's functions have been clearly set out under the Act. So there have been some contradictory statements. I listened to the person in charge of banking supervision on one radio station, if I may say so. And he corrected the person in charge that it is not true that these banks have been consolidated. But if I listen to the governor very well, I thought he said that the banks, these 5 banks, have been consolidated. Unless I didn't hear him well. Okay, so now when you appoint a receiver,
no, I think that the licenses of those 5 banks were revoked. So those banks now cease to operate.
Yes.
So in order that somebody takes care of their assets, liabilities, and their customers, a new entity is now being formed to, if you like, swallow the assets and liabilities and the customers and their deposits. So I don't know if that is what we refer to as consolidation.
So 2 things happened on that day.
Okay.
We were told that, so let's separate it. A new bank called the Consolidated Ghana Limited.
Consolidated Bank
Ghana Limited has been established by the government. That is one unique thing that happened on that day in relation to banking business in this country. Secondly, the Bank of Ghana has revoked, so he uses the word also, so I can use secondly for it. Or also today revoked the licenses of these 5 banks. And goes on to say, and has appointed Mr. Ni Amudodu of KPMG as receiver for the 5 banks. So on that same day, when the receiver may have received his appointment, a consolidated bank has been set up. We are told in the statement, customers, it said deposits of the 5 banks are safe and very profound. They are safe. And have been transferred to the consolidated fund.
Consolidated bank.
The consolidated bank. My question is, under what authority? Quo warranto, under what authority did the Bank of Ghana transfer the deposits? Because you have at the same time appointed a receiver. And the receiver's functions are clearly spelled out. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4. We are all there. And so when you appoint the receiver on that day, the receiver is to take over possession
of the assets
and liabilities. Are we saying that the depositors' money is not part of the assets? They are, in my view. So for what then was the receiver appointed? And under what law were they able to then transfer the assets of these institutions and also their liabilities to this new bank called the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited? I have a problem with that. Perhaps we will need further explanation. Now, so there are more serious issues about this. So again, if you take Construction Bank, there is no issue about the fact that they engage in, they were unable to pay their depositors when they needed their money. But mainly they said that, quote, they said, investigation revealed that similar to the case of Sovereign Bank, both banks, that is Construction Bank and Bridge Bank, obtained their banking licenses under false pretenses through the use of suspicious and non-existent capital, which has resulted in a situation where their reported capital is inaccessible to them for their operations. Now, if you look at this situation under Section 16, Bank of Ghana may justify that some, I think B of Section 16 may be a ground on which that they may have given some false statement to them. They can act on that, okay, to withdraw the license. But you'll be able to now take over the assets of the bank or even transfer them to the receiver, and worse of it, to even transfer it to a new bank, you must also justify that depositors' monies are at stake. And in this statement, they have clearly stated that depositors' monies are safe. So if depositors' monies are safe, on what basis are you now creating a new bank to transfer the safe deposits to another bank? I have a problem with that, and I don't understand the justification for it.
So if I'm hearing you well, you are saying that the Bank of Ghana acted beyond its powers in transferring the assets and liabilities of these 5 banks to the newly created bank. Is that correct?
Well, in fairness, they didn't say liabilities. They said deposits.
Okay.
Have transferred to they said deposits of the 5 banks are safe and been transferred to the consolidated bank.
Okay. And you also have an issue with the Construction Bank stating that their activities, preceded the particular enactment we are looking at.
The taking of the loan.
Section, the Act 930. But there are other things as well.
Yes.
So the bank's inability to inject additional capital to restore its capital adequacy to the minimum capital of 120 million required at the date of licensing threatens the safety of depositors' funds and the stability of the banking system.
I'm saying that it is the receiver who will confirm that indeed and in fact depositors' monies have been at risk. But even before they do so, the Bank of Ghana says that deposits are safe.
Now they're talking about the minimum capital requirement.
Yes, so that's why I have no problem with the withdrawal or cancellation of the license. For example, for construction ban beach, and then we'll get to the others. That's why I say we take it on case by case basis. So until you are able with certainty to establish that depositors' monies or investments have been at risk, it is for the receiver to continue to perform its functions under the law. Another entity, the Bank of Ghana, of course the Bank of Ghana under the Act appoints the receiver, but the receiver has specific functions to perform. So on the very day the receiver is appointed, the deposits which he's going to take possession of have been taken away and given to a new bank. That is what has happened.
All right. So
that's what has happened in my view. So my point is that once we all are in support of what Bank of Ghana is doing, unfortunately they also have to act within the law. I am saying that as far as I'm concerned, they have erred in certain circumstances. Even the act also, in terms of some of the powers given to the Bank of Ghana, can also be challenged when you match it and the relevant provisions of the Constitution. So that one, I am not saying that if Bank of Ghana acted on this act, they may have erred. No. But I'm saying that to the extent that this act will in a way amount to a violation or inconsistency with Article 18 and 20 of the Constitution in terms of expropriation, compulsory acquisition and compulsory taking possession of property of others. But those are matters that we will deal with. But for now, I'm saying that we support what they are doing, but as has
you just want them to play within the law.
As has been occurred in relation to other institutions that have been given absolute powers and have been found to have either erred
or abused the powers,
or in the view of satisfying some exigency or commitment, have also went ahead, they have gone ahead to sidestep the parameters of the law within which they should act. And so they need our support to do it, but they also need our support to also standing by, to also direct that these are the parameters of your own act. What I'm saying is that in my personal view, in relation to some of them and the circumstances under which depositors' monies have been, the licenses I may not have a problem, but the circumstances under which the receiver had not even taken possession of the depositor's money, which is part of his function, it is directly transferred to a new bank. So if eventually the receivers find out that for some of these banks, one, they were not owing depositors, they had sufficient funds to give depositors, and the facts will come up. Then on what basis did you transfer the depositors' money on that very day before the receiver even takes possession into a new bank? Issues about protection of the rights of shareholders will also come up.
Very well. Sydney, hi. Someone, I mean, Lawyer Paul is actually thrown. He's developed various and another leg to the discussion. But we all thought the Bank of Ghana was doing good by seeking to sanitize the sector. But quite interesting points. Lawyer Paul
I'm not saying they are not. I'm just
we're just looking at this.
I'm also asking questions.
Very well. So Lawyer Paul is asking questions.
I think he brings very interesting dimensions to the discussion. Although I disagree with him on most of the things he said. If not all.
Not most.
If not all.
That's the point.
I would make my point. I am not a lawyer, but I would seek to refer to the same act he refers to, and then we'll proceed on the basis of the finance.
Very well.
I think the baseline is at the section 3 of the same act, which gives the basis of the role of the regulator, which is the role of the Bank of Ghana. And so all the basis of what it does must feed into its very object. And the objects are laid down in section 3, which says that the Bank of Ghana shall have the overall supervisory and regulatory authority in all matters relating to the deposit, in all matters relating to deposit taking business. For the purposes of subsection 1, the Bank of Ghana is responsible for A, promoting the safety and soundness of the bank and specialized deposit taking institution, considering all proposing reforms of enactment relating to, and it goes on. When you read the governor's statement, I think in paragraph 3, he actually makes he gives the basis for which the reforms are done, which I think borrows directly from the section 3, which is to say that Ghana needs a strong and stable banking sector to drive the process of economic transformation. The next paragraph says that the Bank of Ghana is mandated by law to promote 1, safety. 2, soundness. 3, and the stability of the financial system, and to protect the interest of depositors. Now that would seem to assume that these objectives are paramount, and he is a lawyer, I am not, but I'm sure that the object and the purpose of the law at any point in time in interpreting the law would supersede whatever the conversations are. Again, I speak as a layman, but once you understand that the overarching purpose of the law is to promote safety, soundness, stability of the financial system, and to protect the interest of the depositors, all the discussions we are having and we must be placed in the purpose of the law. And so, having granted that these are the basis and the purpose for which the BOG must act, let's consider the issues as he raises them. Now, the very first one is that he speaks about section 123, which is the purpose of the receiver. I will turn quickly to the same 123 and then he reads a bit of the sections, but he forgets 5, which is that the law must be read together to understand the meaning. And so when you go to 5, 5 says that the value of the asset and liability and regulatory capital of a bank or specialized deposit taking institution shall be determined in accordance with the valuation standard, and I emphasize valuation standard and procedure prescribed by the Bank of Ghana. Now the prescription of the valuation is given, the powers to prescribe that valuation method is given to Bank of Ghana, and it's in the same section he reads. Now valuation is a finance term, so now let's come back home. On what basis do you do valuation? Which is the questions we must ask in finance, not in law. Now if I'm doing a valuation,
really?
Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
In the basis of valuation, now the question is that what is the base structure of a bank? A base structure of a bank is that a bank takes deposits as liabilities, but he only does that by bringing a certain minimum capital, which is then added to the depositor's liability. Then he creates assets. Base accounting, the capital plus his liabilities will give you a total asset for which the assets are loans, and so the assets will be financed by depositors' funds and the capital of the owners. Now, at any point in time, balance sheet, all the items must balance. At any point in time, when a loan is not working, you depreciate it. Just to say, so if somebody hasn't paid his loan in 30 days, you discount for it by 10%. It goes to 90 days, you discount for it by 25%. You discount for it in 50 days when it goes to doubtful. Then you write off the whole loan against your balance sheet if the person does not pay the loan when it is classified as a loss. And that is 360 days after the person has not paid your loan. Now back to these banks. Now once you understand the nature of the asset, we're told that, so he speaks of construction bank. I will come back to that issue about the provisional licenses and things. But when you look at the figures we're given, we're told that some of them, 3 out of 4, which is almost more than 75% of the entire book, are non-performing loans. That is in the case of I would refer you to it, but that was specifically in the case of Royal Bank.
Yeah, but I didn't even touch on that. So if you are referring to me,
he didn't talk about Royal.
So if you are referring to me, then separate the areas that didn't concern what I said, so that because you started by
making references to what I said and disagreeing with me.
Yes.
So where you want to touch on other matters that I didn't say, make it clear. Otherwise, you bring extraneous matters into what you have already said. I have said, and yet I didn't say.
Lawyer, I guess it's important that discussion is had in the totality of the issues.
The point is he didn't address
I'm speaking to valuation.
Okay.
And that was the basis of which I spoke of the fact that the valuation method is that once I discount for the assets, then obviously what I'm left is a liability. And so I have people's deposit, which I must pay by all means.
All right, so you proceed quickly.
So the point I'm making is that on the basis of the powers given in 1, 2, 3, the powers to determine valuation is given to the BOG, and the method in valuation is finance, which I have just explained. And so what it basically means that at any point in time, when the value of the assets has been written off because of bad loans or loans given to same party owners, the bank does not have the value of the bank may be in deficit in capital. So people would have capital which is minus. What that means is that once you come to the determination of who a receiver is, the receiver is given a value because he's given the assets and liabilities as per the valuation. And so if BOG after the valuation method gives a liability, because that's all that is left with actually deposits, and so he creates a new entity which he has powers to do under section 3. So he creates an entity and then transfers the liability. Don't forget, in valuation or in value of the bank, that is all that is left. And so that is that's the only thing you can transfer. And so that should not be, I think the first point to note is that should not be mistaken for the fact that the receiver and the appointment of it is in excess of the powers of the BOG. That's the first point.
He didn't say that. He was
I
asking,
never said that.
He was actually asking questions.
I never said that. You should have
on what
listened to me.
basis was the Bank of Ghana making the transfer?
When there's a receiver. And that's the point I'm making. And the point I'm making is that the powers of the receiver, subject to section 5, is that there is a valuation of which the assets and liabilities are transferred. And so if after valuation all is left is liabilities to transfer, then in essence it's been transferred both at the value left. And so that does not mean that the liabilities, which is the deposit, transferred to another entity is wrong. And that's the point I'm making.
Very well. I'll come back to you. This is the big issue. We are live on 97.3 City FM and on City TV. We will take a quick break, come back, and Sydney Kesley-Hayford, they say we will hear his own views on the matter. Then we will bring in the other guests as well. Stay tuned in.
The City FM Literacy Challenge is back. Are you a JHS student? Are you willing to contribute to change? What would you do if you were the president of Ghana? Do you want to win a whopping 10,000 Ghana cedis? If yes, then participate in the Literacy Challenge 2018. Level 1. The year is 2035. The law allows people below age 40 to contest the presidency. As a presidential candidate in a general election, in no less than 600 words, write your manifesto speech. Remember, letter must be in your own handwriting, must be endorsed by a parent or guardian. Add your full contact details and post to the Literacy Challenge, P.O. Box GP 14123 Accra Central, or drop it off at the front desk of City FM at the Braka behind the police station. Level 2. The top 50 students selected from all over Ghana shall take a written general knowledge quiz. And finally, Level 3. The top 10 students shall compete in the classic quiz competition to win the ultimate prize of 10,000 Ghana cedis. The Literacy Challenge is powered by 97.3 City FM and sponsored by Data Bank Edifund and MoneyGram with support from City TV. Closing date for entries is Friday, 10th August 2018. Call 0205-973-973 for more inquiries. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, you're welcome back to the big issue. We are live on 97.3 City FM and on City TV. We are also around the globe at citynewsroom.com and on Facebook Live. Before we went for the break, Samuel Ochiri, who is a banking and risk and banking analyst, took the discussion into some other realms and dealt with the matter of valuation, disagreeing amply with Lawyer Opon's initial point, raising questions about what the Bank of Ghana did in respect of granting license, universal banking license to the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited, and also transferring the deposited funds to the new bank, and at the same time appointing a receiver. That is where we are now. I want to bring in Sydney Kisley, but I must also state that Toma Ameri here and Franklin Kujo have joined the squad. We will hear their own views in due course. But Sydney, interesting points Upon raised and interesting rebuttals from Samuel Ochiri. You are a chartered accountant financial analyst. Let's clear this quickly before we delve into other issues of the discussion. What do you stand on this? Do you think that the Bank of Ghana was well within its powers to, first of all, grant the universal banking license to the Consolidated Bank? Yeah, that's fine. Transferring the deposits of customers to that bank when indeed a receiver is been appointed by the same Bank of Ghana.
I'm not quite sure I understand what the lawyer's point is on this.
But you disagreed with me.
Yes, because I don't understand. Because I don't understand.
You should have said that rather.
Let's clarify where your point is coming on this. Are you saying
they say lawyers create problems where there are no problems?
Yes, but there is no problem.
There's a serious problem.
So he's
if there's no problem, there will be no disagreement.
But of course,
that's why we are disagreeing.
Anyway, but it could be that there's no problem, as somebody creates a problem, which people disagree. But I get a point, though.
That is my job as a lawyer. Not to create problems, but to create questions and solve problems.
So are you? So is Lawyer Upon saying in this matter that the Bank of Ghana had no right to declare those banks illiquid and?
No. My point is they have the power to withdraw licenses.
Yes.
And the parameters are set out under Section 16, which I read out.
Yes.
And I'm saying that, for example, if you give false information at the initial stage, it can be a ground for withdrawal.
Yes.
And I maintain that I have no problem with the withdrawal of the licenses for either of them.
But you have a problem with the
my issue. So let's ask. I haven't also said that, and I use Construction Bank as an example. Now let us look at this. Another questions maybe you take from there. When was this Consolidated Bank, the company that has become consolidated, when was it established?
How did they appoint the people?
No, when was it even established?
Exactly.
When did they come into being at the Registrar General's department? When did it apply for a license?
Exactly.
When was it issued with a license?
Why are they using the taxpayers' money to?
That was your area. You see, and also you have appointed a receiver manager. The Act states that the receiver shall take possession of the assets and liabilities of any bank whose license has been revoked.
Any company for that matter.
Yes, no, but this specifically any bank whose license has been revoked. From this statement, it says that on this date, it says the Bank of Ghana has granted a universal banking license to Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited.
And it is fully within its power.
I don't have any problem, but I'm saying that maybe later when we get documents,
we'll be able to establish whether or not
the Bank of Ghana has also today revoked the licenses of Unibank. So also today means that these two events took place on the same day.
And then they just
the Royal Bank so and so, and also has appointed Mr. Ameri Dodu as the receiver of the 5 banks.
Yes.
When you appoint receiver of the 5 banks, he takes possession of the assets and liabilities of these banks.
But in this case,
but please, very clear. There's a precedent. What they have done is the same process they followed for the capital bank, UT bank.
But they didn't consolidate.
What is the purchase and assumption agreement?
There's a difference.
They didn't take the Unibank or UT or Capital Bank's assets and merge them or give it to another company.
So in addressing your point about when this bank was set up, etc., the statement says that on that day, the bank of Ghana granted an investor banking license. It doesn't mean that the bank was formed on that day.
No, in that respect, yes. I asked questions. I didn't make categorical statements.
So to provide some clarity, it could be that government sensing that this would happen went ahead or maybe was proactive, initiated the processes, registrar general, etc.
But that's a duty you may take up from now on.
But of course it would have. I mean, this is not. It's not like as if the governor woke up in the morning and then decided to come and have a press conference and came and sat down and made all these.
Yeah, but Sidney, the point you are always making is that the very reasons for which some of these banks have been called out are issues around governance transparency. So if all of a sudden
and fraud.
And then if all of a sudden you hear that some consolidated animal has been formed. I'm just been formed and directors have been appointed. We do not even know. We may be running into problems because the very reasons for which you said some shareholders had challenges and problems and had doubtful capabilities to run these systems. How many weeks, how many days did we know these persons? I mean, what's this bank's pedigree in any case? I mean, these are questions that ought to be asked. So nobody is saying that the bank can't do anything, but we need to understand how the bank
is to go find out exactly to establish the processes.
And I think in so many ways the way it has been done is innovative, because what they are saying is, for each of the banks that have been taken over, there are specific persons who are going to be responsible for managing those banks. All right,
but they are going to be consolidated.
Well, if you're managing the bank, if you're managing the assets and liabilities, you're managing the bank.
Exactly.
Because what they have not.
No, but the banks don't exist as corporate.
They don't exist.
They don't exist anymore.
Until the process of until they are pulled together in one system, they are separate in law. They don't exist.
But by the consolidation of the bank,
the companies exist, but they cannot perform banking business.
Yes, I understand. I understand the legal. Yes, they exist in physical forms, but they exist as
in law.
They exist,
but they cannot perform banking business.
Their licenses are revoked.
Let me give you a basic analogy.
In practical management, Unibank still has its system secure. It still has its loan portfolio, and it still has its liability obligations should be paid. Okay, and to do so, they have retained Selorm Adonoo. All right, who was, don't forget, he was previously appointed. All right, to secure the Unibank. So he is still responsible for ensuring that Unibank is managed well. But if you read the statement, it says that Ameri Adonoo has been appointed as receiver
this time. Yes.
All right, as receiver this time to ensure the recovery of the assets.
Then what will Selorm Adonoo be doing?
Somebody has to manage the entity called previously called.
Is it ethical that I'm the one who actually went ahead to investigate this bank and I'm now being asked to manage it when the bank is?
I think what the receiver will be doing is to be working on all the banks, not just Unibank.
Yes.
In the previous case,
I'm just asking specific questions.
He's working on the loan portfolios in order to be able to recover as much as they can of all those assets. Don't forget, government has flown in some billions.
Well,
all right.
We have to find out whether that is even legitimate to do so.
Why not?
Because the issue here is that Yaupon started by saying something. Whether this bank, especially Unibank, was insolvent.
Of course, it was insolvent.
No, we'll get to that. So,
Has anybody?
I was really referring to construction rather.
It was running on liquidity support from the central bank
of Ghana.
So why do you at the same time say that depositors' monies are safe?
They are safe because there are guarantees from the
depositor come to say that his money is missing.
You have to safeguard depositors' monies. You cannot say that.
That's a question I'm asking.
The depositors' monies have to be refunded. If the depositor comes and says, I want my $20 million or I want my 20 billion CDs back, you must give it to them.
He said that is in a nutshell, the receiver's job is to ascertain what assets can be retrieved, which are not assets which are immediately available. All right, because those ones have been taken over by consolidated banks, so to say. Now the assets which are not immediately available, like loans which have issues and stuff like that, the receiver's job is to try and draw them in.
The million owed by government, the bank is still illiquid. Okay, so that is clearly proven. Because government is going to pay. The basis of the government is going to pay.
Depositors haven't complained that their money is missing.
Let me rephrase that. Taxpayers are going to pay.
The major loan portfolio, all right, on a bank like Unibank has been recognized to be loans that have been made to friends and family, and they are non-interest bearing assets that have no potential of creating any income for the bank.
According to the bank.
Of course, it is according to the central bank, and that's the central bank's job.
But the Unibank also says that, look, we had issues. It was only once that they got a report in 2017. And in all these matters, they've not even seen the final report. They only hear rumors. They started off in 20th March 2018, and they said their total liabilities of the bank was 1.3 billion. Now, Unibank is saying how that 1.3 billion jumped to 7.3 billion
because they were not declaring all
their liabilities. Because
that is also part of your report.
Yeah, because they were not even informed. They didn't know how the calculations were done.
Not true.
Well, but that's what they're saying. They were not involved in the conversation. They are saying it in private conversations as well.
So I've had the opportunity to read some of the reports from banking supervision. These banks have been asked several times.
Have you seen the reports, Sydney?
Yes, I have.
Let's allow Sydney to flow, and we'll come back to you.
No, if let him.
So listeners and viewers can follow.
It's good for him to interrupt. Then when he's on the floor, I will also.
We don't want a lot of that. So let's chaos.
No, so I'm saying that what I'm hearing is an attempt to try and discredit the Bank of Ghana's position in doing what it has done.
No.
All right.
No.
But you're saying banking supervision haven't done their job properly. They didn't do their job properly. The bank is saying that they were not engaged, etc. Private conversations you have had saying that the banks are saying that they were not informed of their liabilities. But nobody can inform you of your liabilities. You know your liabilities. Bank of Ghana cannot come up and put a certain statement. But don't forget that their assessment and their estimation of what the liabilities are based on investigations which they have conducted, and also based on the credibility and the viability of the assets and liabilities that the bank has declared.
Yeah, but Sydney, in valuation, and I did valuation.
Nobody's challenging anybody's
credibility. If you value my properties, and if you value my assets, you must sit with me for us to validate those assets. It's not a one-party thing. And what I'm hearing, you can even appoint your own, and then you come to an agreement. I'm just forgetting the term. What the values are. These persons are beginning to speak, and they are saying that not once did you even sit with them to assess the values that you actually came up with. And they are even saying that the 4.3 billion figure, they decided to take it as it is. And they said, going forward, we are trying to show you that if you value the assets properly and actually held them against the exposure or the gap, it is going to be significantly reduced.
Yes.
You didn't do that.
No.
You didn't sit with them to. No. Let me land.
He's interrupting my flow.
Let me land.
He can't land.
And then you went ahead and
he can land when he's. He can land when it's my turn. No, I haven't taken too long.
Including government receivables.
So let's all agree that Sidney should finish his point quickly.
Right.
In 1
He's
minute.
coming on the back of an interjection.
No, you are coming on the back of an interjection.
Yes, let nobody interject Sidney. Let Sidney finish his point so listeners can follow.
Let me make something clear, and let's be clear. You see, doing valuations in particular sectors of a business are specialist jobs.
Exactly.
Okay. Exactly. If I go into an FMCG company, fast-moving consumer goods company, and I'm going to do a valuation of the potential of people to pay back their receivables, it's a different methodology.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Different way of doing it. When you're doing banking,
yes,
all right, there are specific guidelines as to what loans are considered to be bad and what loans are considered to be
that's understood. But if you're also valuing assets,
so if
there's a business for doing
no. Assets are different.
I just want him to finish.
Assets is when you say assets, it's a whole category because receivables and loans are also assets.
Yeah.
And there could be tangible assets and there could be intangible assets.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Now, in banking, if a loan has not been serviced for 30 days, there is a certain provision, and Samuel made that point. You're expected to write off 10%. If it is 90 days, 25%. If it is 360 days, you're expected to make provision for 100% of that loan.
Yes.
It doesn't mean the loan is bad.
Yeah.
But in case it does go bad.
No, it's not that in case. It doesn't make it bad. But what it means is that you're supposed to provide against it. All right? If one day after 360 days, that loan is paid,
it goes to your income.
It comes back into your income.
Yes,
sure. All right? So Bank of Ghana has a methodology.
Yeah.
And it applies that methodology. You, the bank, who has given us the facility, you don't have the authority to come and tell the Bank of Ghana that this loan that you are telling me I have to make 100% provision. It is, I believe that it is collectible, so I'm only providing 50%. You don't have that authority. You don't.
Yeah, but nobody is saying, nobody is disputing that.
That is what you're saying.
In the matters we are discussing, there are also landed assets which ought to be leveraged. And I think the Bank of Ghana's own
they did their own valuation of those things.
They did their own valuation of those assets.
Without recourse. What type of assets are you referring to? Is it a fixed asset
fixed
or is it
fixed assets? You have a loan. You have a loan
fixed assets. I'm not quarreling with the landed property.
People are saying that we disagree with what you are saying.
Some aspects of the valuation
is our liabilities and what we owe. We do not agree. You don't have the right to disagree.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You have no right to disagree.
That's unfair.
No, it is not unfair.
That's not have to do with
because that is the basis. That is the basis on which you are giving a license to bank. All right, the license to bank is given with certain criteria and understanding of what your roles and responsibilities are.
Exactly.
And there are conditions. So if you do not comply, you cannot now come to a point and say, I signed.
Okay, when it comes to
not quite correct, it's very correct.
He's disagreeing with you, Pat.
As Cynthia said, just the certain part. See, when it comes to the value of the loan asset itself, Sydney is very correct. All right, there's a certain amount under law that you have to provide against
it's called
based on the number of days after it has gone into default.
It's called Basel III rules. Okay. When you sign to it, that is what you must do.
All right. So based on that, you can actually have the actual value of what is left of a loan if it's gone into default.
And that's very easy to compute.
Very easy. As Franklin is also correctly pointing out, you see, one of the issues that would come up in terms of valuation is that let's assume you've given a loan and it's gone into default. Now you have security. Okay, let's say landed property. Okay, and your ability to claw back the loan which is in default now depends upon how you can
leverage
that landed property. And you now say that this building is your valuation puts it at 5 million Ghana cedis, and the Bank of Ghana puts it at 2 million Ghana cedis. Then there's a problem there, because the Bank of Ghana is going to that difference of 3 million is going to result in a differential of 3 million in terms of the entire value of the bank and its net value. You understand? And this is one problem, I think, where Unibank and the Bank of Ghana seem to be having some disagreements.
Yeah, so let me read Dr. Dufour's letter to the official administrator, a portion of it, official administrator copied to the Deputy Governor, Dr. Maxwell Opoku-Afari, under demand on shareholder. The last point there says that the validation of these figures is of utmost importance. Of course, it preceded it by looking at some of the figures. For example, at the meeting with the Deputy Governors at the Bank of Ghana, the OA, that's official administrator, indicated that the additional items in determining the enhanced amounts of 5.7 billion cedis included a facility of 200 million cedis to Uni Securities Limited. And it states that, however, this amount had already been included as part of the earlier amount of the 4.9 billion. And this is clear indication that before any amount is crystallized as an outstanding obligation of the shareholders, it should have been properly vetted and agreed by both parties. So I think the point they are making here is that 200 million, which was initially computed, which became part of the total liabilities of the bank in this case, had already been computed. So in
fact, they actually depressed their values 4 times in a month.
The two sides should have actually sat together to agree or maybe so both parties understand themselves. Let me come quickly on that.
Let me make 2 points quickly.
So quickly, yes.
The very first point I want to make is that when you look at the report, it says that Unibank and Royal Bank were identified during the asset quality review update in 2016 exercise to be significantly undercapitalized. That's the first point I want to make. And so it's important we all understand that the issues did not begin today. It didn't
begin last week.
So, and that's
I
am making a point.
No, asking us to understand.
The basis of the conversation we're having now is from an exercise done in 2016 for which it was identified as significantly undercapitalized. For whatever reason that Unibank or whichever of the banks disagree to numbers with the regulator, they must disagree and they must seek legal recourse. It gets them to
going beyond legal recourse. Were there instances where they decided that look, they were going to capitalize and do how do you call it? Have a schedule.
They did. They actually provided some. But
the fact that they have money to
those promises or those proposals were credible, and the Bank of Ghana could stand on it and say, okay, for this you are giving this amount of time, it's another matter.
And that is why I trade from 2016, and that's the same reason why I make this point to say that if these are issues emerging now, then probably it would look like a certain bit more time would be fair. But 2016 are the issues. Now, the second point I'm making is that the business of banking is not the business of selling property or any other thing. The business of banking is the business of selling and buying money. Which means that liquidity is extremely important.
But you can put those properties in a special purpose vehicle and leverage that and get money.
You see, that's not how you run banking, and that's not how you run a bank.
Does banking run only on liquid cash?
Banking is
what are you talking about?
Principally cash.
But if I have assets, why do banks ask for collateral?
Senior,
what are you talking about?
The principle,
we know that. Yes. But the question to be asked, I mean, he's making a general comment, and we need to understand that.
But I thought he said principally or mainly.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter really is that you can't discount assets landed or physical assets in
the business of banking.
It's not possible.
All right. So,
He's not saying you should discount it.
But I said principally.
Principally, so it agrees of other things. Yes, it does.
No matter how minor.
What do you mean to what percentage? The law just says that in the case of a default and the gaps, shareholders may be given the opportunity to upfront the cash or leverage the assets. So which law are you referring to?
I'm not referring to the law that he was ready to recapitalize the bank.
Do you appreciate the concept of capital adequacy?
That's the second point I'm coming to. The basis on which
even that is disputed, the way it was computed.
Who has disputed that?
It's an international definition.
No, I'm saying that in the factors that are coming up,
in relation to
it, you can only evaluate this in relation to international standards. You can't get up and say that I'm doing one myself. I'm also disappointed in you, frankly. This kind of contorted argument, it doesn't make any sense. He's disappointed in me because he doesn't see my
we will return and continue with the discussion. Don't go away.
I'm saying
Live music, interviews, poetry, and more with your favorite personalities. Be our guest on Saturdays from 2 to 4 p.m. for the most exciting moments on TV. Join Kojo Akoto Boateng for real entertainment right in your living room. Saturday Live on City TV and City 97.3 FM.
Wherever the weekend sporting action happened, we will bring it to you here on Scorecard. Every goal, every dunk, every punch, the winning strides, and the winning volleys.
Come international media, he said, look, wait, sit and wait. Let me have a meal with my people. And I think that's the same cool, it's the same organization he brings to the field every time I've seen him play. He looks to me like somebody who has played over 50 caps already. Okay. But this guy has barely played over 25 caps for the national team.
All of the weekend's action in one place. Scorecard, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. prompt on City TV.
You're welcome to the big issue. We went on that quick break because the studio was getting heated. Sami was making a point. Samuel Ochri was making a point. He'll quickly finish that, then we'll move to the next leg of the discussion. So, Sami, you're making a point about liquidity and capital adequacy ratio.
Yes.
Just in 1 minute.
Yes. So, what I was saying is that the business of banking principally is about liquidity. Because if I'm a depositor and I walk to a bank, I should get my money. And a bank cannot tell me that it's created an asset with it, and so I have to wait 90 days to come back for my deposit. It wins the basis of banking, which is trust. And so the trust element that I can walk to a bank any day and take my money is the basis for which the industry runs. And the second point is capital adequacy, which is to say that to determine insolvency, not like other industries, you take the risks every bank holds and discounted for the liquidity in that risk, so which is what we call risk-weighted assets. And so if I have an asset, the question to ask is that how liquid is that asset in the long term, in order to determine the how solvent the bank is.
And short term as well. In the short term.
So
how quickly you can turn into cash.
Exactly. So I think that needs to be distinguished from other businesses, such that we're not confused with the fact that they have properties and all of that. People want liquidity. They need their cash, and that is the basis for which trust in banking.
They cannot wait for you to go sell the assets.
On the basis of those assets, the deposit with the Bank of Ghana is saying
and on the basis of those assets,
is it not the deposit
managed to secure almost $400 million?
Only $450 million.
All right, so
and they are talking about billions.
So let's move the discussion forward. Thomas, I want you to tell me about what this means for the indigenous banking market, because in the past 1 year or so, all the issues we've really had have been issues, which have concerned the local banks. We have UT and Capital. Sovereign Bank came in at some point. Now we have three more. That is Beige, Construction, and then and a Royal.
So this exercise, who were being called doomsayers at that time, are being proved right. Now, Selorm, this is the situation. Unibank was the biggest privately owned indigenous bank in Ghana. It's gone. Along with Royal Bank, Sovereign Bank, Beige, okay? Construction. They're out of it. Now, you heard about the merger between Heritage Bank, Premium Bank, and GM Bank, GM Bank, Premium Bank, and BSIC also. I understand that thing has unraveled. That was entirely privately driven. It was not under Bank of Ghana supervision. It was unraveled. GM Bank doesn't have the capital to go it alone. Apparently, Premium too has issues as well. Basically, we are facing a situation where we'll have, if we're not careful, you end up having about 4 at most indigenous banks left when the dust settles. Okay, well, I mean, Cow should get through it. Fidelity's already got through it. Prudential should be able to get through it. But even they have issues now because they made a loss for 2017.
But they are making it.
But they should be able to make it, But we all know the issues about the usefulness of having indigenous banks, within the economy. But very few are going to survive it. And there's something inside this statement which I think that's what we need to emphasize now. Government says it's committing to assist indigenous banks to meet the minimum capital who have not been able to do so due to what they call unfavorable market conditions. I think that now should be the emphasis of our advocacy for government, because that is the very correct thing to do. There are some banks that have been well managed. Okay, there is the possibility of them getting outside capital. Now, let me explain this very carefully. One of the reasons why Bank of Ghana wants consolidation and predominantly indigenous banks, they have noticed that where there's concentration of power among indigenous bank owners, people tend to misuse the power. That's when, as the Bank of Ghana said, people will approve loans on the back of the envelope and send to their managers to disperse loans. So the whole idea of consolidation is that if you have a lot of people all together owning a bank, one person cannot go outside the proper processes and disperse money. Okay, so based on that, Bank of Ghana want third parties outside, that is people outside the current shareholders, to come in and own shares in some of these banks to ensure that they'll be well managed. When you have lots of shareholders, there's less likelihood that one shareholder will go outside the normal processes. All right, so fine, you have banks that have been well managed so far. If they are willing to go outside, to go to external shareholders, in order to expand the shareholder base, in order to meet the minimum capitalization, I think that the government should support those banks, even if it means extending time. I was saying it on a program here on City last week. That when you talk about unfavorable market conditions, for example, let's say you want to go on the stock exchange, like Energy Bank. Energy Bank is a Nigerian bank that wants to become a local bank. All right? But the problem there is that they want to do an IPO. The IPO, their timing now coincides with MTN's IPO. MTN's IPO is 10 times bigger than any other IPO done in Ghana before, 3.46 billion cedis. But because it's MTN, everybody will go there first. If Energy Bank puts the IPO up against at the same time as MTN's IPO, nobody's going to buy Energy Bank shares. All right? So these are unfavorable. This is one of the aspects of unfavorable market when it comes to the stock exchange. So I think that we should now be trying to get government to keep to its word of providing support from there. Either it's provide bridging finance for companies who are willing to go to the stock market, but they've just run out of time because December 31st is around the corner. Either you provide bridging finance for them to recapitalize, then when they go on the IPO, they pay it off. Or you extend the recapitalization deadline within a reasonable time for them to be able to complete their public issue. The same thing in mergers and acquisitions. The other way of raising capital that the Bank of Ghana has been supporting is mergers and acquisitions. But right now, think about it, Selorm. For a local bank to get engaged in a merger now is very, very difficult. Indigenous banking has been demonized by some banks who have done the wrong thing. I mean, when you read the Bank of Ghana report, there's a lot of criminal activity here. But we're also ignoring the fact that there are several banks that have been very, very well managed. Look at Fidelity Bank, for instance. Cow Bank as well. I mean, these are banks that have been run properly. Okay, now when banks like that, when you have banks that have been well managed like that, they now need to merge or something. But everybody's like, hey, indigenous bank, oh no, these guys are bad market. Then you're going to have the customer base that are bringing on board. So it becomes far more complicated than it looks. I mean, it's easy to say merger and acquisition, but these things take time, especially in this kind of situation. So what we should be concentrating on now is preserving indigenous banking by either pushing government to either extend the deadline, I mean, maybe by a year or something. I don't support the 5 years the Association of Indigenous Bank have been asking for. I don't see why somebody should rely on retained profit over 5 years in order to pay his share capital requirements. But maybe some amount of time in order for them to complete the mergers and acquisition process or to go into the stock market. Either that, if you say you won't move the deadline, then at least government should find a way to provide bridging finance for those which Bank of Ghana has identified to be well managed. For them to meet the deadline, then they can. 1980s. That's in the 1980s. World Bank and Government of Ghana. Yes.
And have we forgotten that the reason why we set up the non-performing asset recovery trust was because of this very reason? That at that time there were virtually no privately owned indigenous banks. All those banks were owned by government, and government had put there managers who were their own people, cronies and family.
Which is the situation we're facing now.
Which is exactly the same situation, more or less, you're facing now, except it's a liberalized version. All right? And what the World Bank did was to package all of the toxic loans from each of those banks and then set it up into the non-performing asset recovery trust and manage that separately. In other words, it was a receivership only based on recovering those loans and toxic assets. Governments stepped in and did that. All right? And by doing that, they tidied up the system and allowed the banks an opportunity to restart the process again, and this time to give better, cleaner, and more recoverable loans. And what you're saying is that we should do the same thing again. All right? It has been done before. And we have ended up where we are today. All right? Where the governance structure that is put in place has been bastardized simply because the banking supervision department in the Bank of Ghana had not been vigilant enough and followed through what it should do in order to ensure that we do not get to this situation of toxic assets and bad loans in which...
See, the difference is that we have learned our lessons. Right now, the corporate government
I'm not sure you have, because you're saying we should do the same thing again.
In April, all right, will solve a lot of these problems. If we have been following the corporate government directives the Bank of Ghana introduced in April, we have been following these things, if you had introduced those things maybe even 5 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are today.
So,
Yes.
I mean,
It's because you don't have a new governor who's prepared to do the things properly.
So let me get to Frank.
So you can't kill him because he's doing the right
on
thing.
responsibility apportionment. I mean, everybody is speaking about what the Bank of Ghana has been doing. Now, we had a case of UT and Capital. We are yet to hear what actions or sanctions the government is taking against directors of those banks. Now we have 5 banks, struggling or suffering the same fate of the UT and Capital somewhat. Where should the responsibility be placed? Should the taxpayer continue funding the should I say incompetence and fraudulent activities, if you like, of individuals, directors of these banks, and the dereliction of duty of specific people at the Bank of Ghana, for example? So, for example, you say people acquired licenses using false pretenses. Somebody should be there to ensure that that shouldn't happen. The issues of insolvency, when they were happening, where was the Bank of Ghana? People acquired funds from places they shouldn't have to start the bank. It shouldn't have been so.
Yes.
What was the role of the bank?
People have given loans. People have given loans to close associates, family and personal, with no intention of collecting that money back.
And the second, what should the directors of those banks
be somebody is owing you the process to recover the
money?
It's really not necessary. But listen, look, nobody is saying you should absolve people from bad behavior.
But by giving the history so far, we've not really seen anybody being sanctioned. The big guys are still out there.
It will come. It takes a while to build a case.
Well, it's almost 1 year since Capital and UT went down.
There's too much of this rush to something. You can't go to court with a bad case. You will lose. So you got to build a proper case. Make sure you have all the facts and legal aspects correct. That's what you do. Before you step into court. So take your time. Take your time.
So frankly, now come to that.
The Frank has been interrupting everybody.
What I've heard so far is that the bank itself, I think an official was saying recently that they don't have prosecutorial powers. And I've heard that IOCO seems to be jumping into the fray, incidentally, IOCO. Which may be a useful thing to do. Fact of the matter is that, look, we can't excuse criminal activity. But of course, even God, in his own garden, when he knew that Adam and Eve had committed sin, he said, "What have you done?" Of course, he knew. And that is what had happened. Which I suspect is a principle.
So for those of us who are not Christians, where is the analogy?
No, but it's a general legal principle. You give somebody a hearing.
I don't know whether it's Baha'i faith.
That God said
he knew the wrong they had done.
Go to court and present that. Let's see if you win your case.
That's exactly what the case is. That's the principle. So, look, if people have accepted that they committed illegality, they should be dealt with. What we should not allow is to put out statements in people's mouths and make it look as if they've accepted complicity. I'm saying that in the case of Unibank, I'm just trying to single out Unibank here because it's a very big bank and there are issues they've raised that, look, in all these efforts to assess their viability or whatever, it was only once that they saw a report. In fact, they just wrote on August 3rd to the Secretary of the Bank of Ghana that, well, you're all about saying that you've committed this in their names. And the people are saying that, no, we should have sat down to actually look at those values, because in law it's also accepted. I think section Yapon, you know the law, but I'm told that section 115 of the Act 930 gives the first option for recapitalization to existing shareholders after the official administrator's 90-day report. So at this juncture, the report has been produced. As we've heard, the report is being in bits and pieces. That's what was said in public.
115,
yeah, and the people involved, in this case Unibank, hasn't even seen the report, and especially when they've had issues with some aspects of the work that had been done by the official administrator, it's just important that some time be given for them to at least not probably contest some of the issues as well. I think it's important because there have been instances and they've shown clearly, I've seen lots of documents which suggest that if there have been proper meetings where they validated and vetted some of these claims and figures that were thrown at them, then what it meant was that they could have been able to narrow the gap properly. They seem not to understand how 4.4 billion would have been wiped off in one fell swoop without any significant meetings. I don't see that as good corporate governance. I don't understand. If you want to exert the same good governance of persons, you should be seen to be doing same. I'm mortified. Look, I was one of the first persons to say that we now have a central bank governor. You saw my post applauding the bank, but it was as if we're hearing from one party. And the fact that there have been instances of, there are cases being mentioned here, even across this table, that for certain type of liquid transactions, of course, the process of assessing their values or viability is known. But where it is in law that you can still significantly leverage assets of shareholders in order to recapitalize a struggling bank, I think that type of assessment must be based on proper valuation, which I understand you are saying and Sydney is saying is very different when it comes to when you are assessing values or assets of a bank. And that's the domain in which my first degree was. So I can understand that. If you accept that you can leverage assets, landed assets, fiscal assets, to, as it were, significantly reduce the exposure of the gap, why are we not having that conversation? It's important that conversation is had. So the point about using that as a purpose of what's the point? Making sure that it's liquid enough and it will be difficult to, or it may take longer because you need money. It's neither here nor there. Because these persons have shown instances where they've managed. I just don't want to mention the European Bank, a very prestigious bank. Their letters I've seen, almost $400 million. That all of this was discounted. I don't think that if you were interested in solving an issue, you rush to say that you are using taxpayer money to set up some bank. And then tell me, and people already, government apparatchiks on Facebook are saying, had we not, we are losing almost 7 billion that we could have used to do 1D, 1F, 1D, 1 this, 1 this, 1 village, 1 dam. That's not the conversation we should be having. Nobody has forced anybody to go and use taxpayer money to start anything.
You have the last word on this. So moving into, so what happens to jobs? I mean, in the finance minister's statement, the statement talked about the fact that as much as possible, they will save a lot of jobs, which presupposes that quite a number of some jobs will certainly go. The ghost of the UT capital, employees matters haven't been put to rest properly yet, and now we're going to have a similar instance where some people will have to be going. What should we be doing in respect of job losses in these 5 banks?
I think there are clear social consequences we can't run away from, and that we must admit. I do not think that.
I thought those jobs are safe as well.
Clearly,
that's what they've said. Because the deposits are safe.
Don't be responding to everything. Just address me.
This is the way the show goes, by the way. So
all staff of these banks will become staff of the consolidated bank.
That's a general rule. You can't have.
This is generally.
I think it's fair to only anticipate these social consequences because it would look like most likely we would have some of these issues down the line because this is a new entity that has almost a big employee base to select the best to building a new entity.
But that's not what they are saying. They said they are safe.
The basis of their safety, I cannot speak for the regulator, but from an expert point of view, I think that going forward, these social consequences would happen. The problem is how the entity manages these. And I think that we didn't manage UT Bank, Capital Bank, the exit, and some issues arising out of it. I don't think it was managed quite well. I think that a bit more care needs to be taken, because overall, the quality of life of people should be paramount. And so the discussion should focus on what the social consequences are on employees, because these are people who may have been working for years, and then now they are put into one big entity for which operational efficiency over time may require that there is a certain harmonization. And so in doing that over time, because if you have in a location, if you have 5 branches of different, because there are 5 banks, if you have 5 branches, I wouldn't expect the same entity unless they are all profitable. And then it doesn't.
They may have to accept.
They can't come if they are next door.
So, for example, there will be duplications in some roles.
With GCB Bank closed down, I think was it 22 branches of UT, and
because in some areas you have a number of
matter. Even though you have 5 banks, not each of those banks are problematic in terms of their operations and their management and their profitability. Each one of them. Unibank
taking a loan to
that's
capitalization.
Point as well. But there are bigger issues now of insolvency.
Different case. It's not that they are
and false pretenses.
No, falsification.
Let your opponent lose.
Let prevails over what you will say. This is not law.
Let your opponent do his law. Let your opponent do his law. That Act 930 was established after all those banks had been set up. The practical reality which you are facing is that they are illiquid.
Yeah, so I think that's the bigger point.
They are illiquid. They have employees who have to be paid, and yet there is no money to pay them.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Which one?
Construction is no. For example, yes, I mean there is no evidence that they are not able engage and so on. Is there evidence that they are not able to pay
their bank is not able to pay
share capital? They have no capital.
So you have the final word on this.
Well, no, wait a second. Construction bank. The shareholders themselves, the owners, decided they will fold the bank out before this happened.
Yes, so what I'm saying that by their evidence they haven't been able to pay their workers.
On the workers' points, maybe no, but the other points.
Which other point?
I mean, the fact that they themselves.
The Bank of Ghana says depositors' monies are safe.
Very well. So,
and that is because the government has put 450 million.
They are it's over 7 billion.
The issuance of bond, where does that go? It's a financing gap. You finance some of
the money now.
Listen to what the governor said.
No, you don't. Let's not go there. Yeah, let's not go there, please. No, that is not the argument. Yeah. The argument.
The money is there with budget.
The discussion was what is going to happen to the staff.
2018 budget.
All right. The discussion is what is going to happen to the staff and what they.
Okay, let me. So he was going to ask me.
And I'm saying that. And my point I was coming back to is that whether you like it or not, when you have put 5 toxic companies under one umbrella to try and manage it.
It's good.
All right. It is very, very likely, in fact, most likely that people will lose their jobs, irrespective of what political statement.
So the Bank of Ghana statement
is political. Is this a political?
Of course, it's political.
So the decision was not more based on banking.
See what I say.
You said it's based on banking principles.
Are you telling me that you are naive enough to believe that nobody will lose their job?
Oh no.
It's not about your belief.
It's not.
It's about
so what are you saying?
We were reminded that we are talking about banking principles, and when the governor of Ghana has come out in an official statement, this is an instrument to say that
a legal instrument.
Of course, I mean the Bank of Ghana when they use the tax thing. So let me.
None of the banks were going to be the minimum capital anyway. The jobs will still have gone.
So that consequence
they would have gone. And they would have to lay people off.
No, Page had laid off 500. Which I expect you to.
I don't think we are.
Is there any legal
governor of the Bank of Ghana not a political appointee?
For example, Unibank. I mean, is there any legal remedy for Unibank?
Well, first of all,
given the issues they have raised.
First of all, I think that I've already mentioned Article 18.
But read the
no property of any description shall be taken possession of or compulsorily acquired by the government unless provisions are made for prompt payment of adequate compensation.
Based on proper valuation.
It must be consistent with certain grounds. One, necessities. One, taking into consideration the rights of persons, for the safety of the state, prevention of crime, for public morality, public planning, and the rest of them. They are listed there. There must be a law which contains these conditions for the acquisition or the taking of possession of this. This is a constitutional provision. That's why I'm saying that on this matter, I am not blaming Bank of Ghana. But the question is, the act which gives them these powers and the relevant provisions, are they not inconsistent with the constitution which I have referred to, which is the supreme law? That is one aspect. Number two, the act, if you read this statement, page 3, it says that to ensure some of the assets, it said to help ensure that the banking sector maintains a strong indigenous presence, the government has established a new bank called Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited, which will act as bridge bank pursuant to section 12711. Now 12711 is here. First, the tense is the receiver may, upon the prior written approval of the Bank of Ghana, and according to its guidelines, pursue the following activities. It mentions deposit of the assets and liabilities of a bank or specialized dispose of the assets and liabilities of a bank or specialized deposit taking institution through a purchase and assumption transaction. Okay. Organize a restructuring of the assets and liabilities of the bank. C. Continue viable or necessary operations through a bridge institution. Significantly, between the C and the B, the word or is used. So you cannot apply both. Now, when you come to page 3, it says the government has capitalized the new bank in the amount of 450 million, and the Bank of Ghana has issued it with a universal bank. And earlier it says that it is acting on section 12711 and has established this bank as a bridge bank. So you cannot establish a bridge bank and at the same time dispose of the assets and liabilities of a bank whose license has been revoked. The word "or" is very significant. This
go to court. Very well. So it simply means that let them go to this. Let them go to court. Let them go to I have a question.
I have a question.
You can use both. Okay. So Harold, let me take some comments and move to the next issue quickly. Of course, it's understandable that this was the biggest issue of the week, so we have to devote a lot more time to this. So the Bank of Ghana, this is a comment from Harold. It said the Bank of Ghana has given the banks up to December 2018 to recapitalize. What is the rush in revoking their license before the deadline? I support Thomas' point suggesting that we extend the deadline by a year. In fact, the fact that the Bank of Ghana can't wait for their own deadline is very interesting, as if they feel that if they wait till December, some specific banks would meet the deadline. That's an interesting one from Harold.
That doesn't make. That's not logical. These things have been going on.
Kwame Samson.
Problems with the banks have been going on.
But they are not. They are just comments, you know.
Yeah, but it's nice to respond to them.
But we don't have time. It's not about that. Kwame Samson Toner says, I'm shocked at Sydney's behavior and analysis on Unibank. Of course, people will say things. So, indeed, time changes. All right, so that's from Samson from Boston, USA. K. Amofa says, it's the part of the puzzle I do not understand. It's like we are going round all the time as a people. And he references another discussion. Efo Kekeli Kokubansa, said this is an organized crime by the banks against the people of Ghana, and the appropriate institutions must take the necessary actions against them. We can't continue using our taxes to be paying for someone's mess. Hashtag the big issue. Another one says, I get worried when instead of finding solutions, we refer to international standards for convenience. The international community is not in any way interested to see Ghanaian financial sector grow. Our own unique solutions will draw investors here. Hashtag the big issue. This one says that is the African capable of managing his own affairs? Sydney, who developed the international standards and practice for banking? It's time Africans developed processes and policies to work for us. US with all expertise had a bad experience. Hashtag the big issue. Hashtag CityCBS fanatic. That's his handle. It says, what do you expect when owners of these banks engage the services of so-called first-class students with no particular attention to competency? Until this trend is changed, I'm afraid many companies will fold up soon. Hashtag the big issue. I'm not quite sure what to say in there. But okay. And other comments here. What is the strategy of BOG in promoting local inclusion in the financial sector in Ghana? If intentional promotional drive, or if intentional promotional drives are not clearly communicated, then BOG may end up administering only foreign banks in Ghana. Hashtag the big issue. Did the BOG carry out the merger without the consent of the shareholders, or the shareholders were involved in the merger decision or consolidation decision? So what happens if the consolidated bank also collapses? Hashtag the big issue. All right, we'll move on to the next issue. Which
why is it that we are not rather ensuring that these banks, the state, I mean, in the US, it happened. The state took his own money.
All right, so
that's collapse. Why should you show up a bank that has been set up?
No, I mean, wait, let me take a quick break. On Ameri.
The City FM Literacy Challenge is back. Are you a JHS student? Are you willing to contribute to change? What would you do if you were the president of Ghana? Do you want to win a whopping 10,000 Ghana cedis? If yes, then participate in the Literacy Challenge 2018. Level 1. The year is 2035. The law allows people below age 40 to contest the presidency. As a presidential candidate in a general election, in no less than 600 words, write your to the Literacy Challenge. P.O. Box GP 14123 Accra Central, or drop it off at the front desk of City FM at the Braka behind the police station. Level 2. The top 50 students selected from all over Ghana shall take a written general knowledge quiz. And finally, Level 3. The top 10 students shall compete in the classic quiz competition to win the ultimate prize of 10,000 Ghana cedis. The Literacy Challenge is powered by 97.3 City FM and sponsored by Data Bank Edifund and MoneyGram with support from City TV. Closing date for entries is Friday, 10th August 2018. Call 0205-973-973 for more inquiries. Terms and conditions apply.
Live music, interviews, poetry, and more with your favorite personalities. Be our guest on Saturdays from 2 to 4 p.m. for the most exciting moments on TV. Join Kojo Akoto Boateng for real entertainment right in your living room. Saturday Live.
Wherever the weekend sporting action happened, we will bring it to you here on Scorecard. Every goal, every dunk, every punch, the winning strides, and the winning volleys.
International media, he said, look, wait, sit and wait. Let me have a meal with my people. And I think that's the same cool, it's the same organization he brings to the field every time I've seen him play. He looks to me like somebody who's played over 50 cups already. Okay. But this guy He's barely played over 25 caps for the national team.
All of the weekend's action in one place. Scorecard every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. prompt on City TV.
Alright, you're welcome back to The Big Issue, live on 97.3 City FM. We are also on City TV and at citynewsroom.com. Some more messages have come in. There's a long one from Justice Ofe Gina of the Africa Economic Dialogue. Of course, I cannot read all these, but I entreat all of you to make your comments a bit short and snappy so we can read them. Collapsing banking search approach collapses public confidence and panic withdrawal. Insolvency is a common phenomenon in the banking or cash management, and it will surprise you that the US and UK get more than 5 bank failures every year, even this year, but properly measures and policy cushion the public confidence. But my research on the implementation period of all BIS minimum requirements to be adopted by central banks across the member countries, longer transition arrangements are given to banks to effectively achieve their goal of monetary and financial stability. Justice, I realize your comment is quite long but useful, but I entreat you to make it shorter next time. Michael Ameni, texting from the UK, says the financial challenges that the local banks are facing now are as a result of the non-compliance of financial regulations at the time of their establishment, and we should blame those BOG management management of the BOG who issued their licenses. The decision by the current BOG governor to merge or consolidate these 5 local banks so that they cannot run into bankruptcy is a welcoming news. Good morning, Selorm. Bank of Ghana's assessment is based on 3 pillars: corporate governance, legal framework, and capital adequacy ratio. Based on macroeconomic analysis, all the 5 banks failed the asset test and valuation carried out within the consolidation of the processes. UT and Capital banks were put under GCB, while these 5 banks are under the consolidated bank under a CEO and other directors. Thank you, Wisdom Dovlo in Adenta.
So what is this?
Good morning. Let's use the opportunity to educate the public not to take their monies or savings from these affected banks and any other indigenous banks. The economy is sinking. This is Mali from Tema. Hashtag the big issue. Good morning, guys. My wife and I are enjoying the show and the great intellect displayed by all the panelists. Yes. But I want to beg Sydney that the fact that others do not agree with his doesn't mean his argument is, or the argument is contorted, because
he understands.
Is that because we've taken 2 commercial breaks? All right.
Because of me, we've taken 2 commercial breaks.
That's Frank and Achimota. Frank and his wife from Achimota.
Frank and your wife, I greet you.
All right. Good morning. Guess this.
We have to search out.
How can the factory inspectorate? Okay, I don't know where this is from. Selorm, in as much as we are blaming the previous government, BOG and the affected banks themselves for these collapses, we should also be candid and honest enough to tell Mr. President and his appointing authorities that they have failed us as leaders. About 8 local banks collapsed in less than 2 years, bringing about high job losses. Why Ghana? Ghana deserves better. Okay, you make some other comments. All right, so God have mercy. Ralph Ayi from New Bai. That's from Things Fall Apart. Good morning, Selorm. I'm enjoying the show. From Latifu Mohammed in Winneba. A lot of your comments have been coming through. We thank you for them. We want you to keep sending them in. Now let's go to Ameri. Sydney, last week you were categorical, as if in fact you were actually prophetic that the Ameri deal would not be passed by Parliament. I challenged you, but you got it right. Parliament failed to pass it for various reasons. Maybe the minority did a very good job this time by raising the issues. Now we are hearing from sources that the government or the president was misled. Mind you, the president gave, through his secretary, gave executive approval, and that was the basis for which the deal was laid in Parliament. Parliament is on recess now, and we are also here. It's sent back. Does this vindicate your position, and what should we be doing now, Sydney?
Well, look, the Ameri, supposed new Ameri deal, when I read it and I saw the terms and conditions, I thought it was a very bad deal. I'm glad Parliament deferred it for discussion. I think we had a couple of parliamentarians, minority parliamentarians on the show.
No, there was one majority, one minority last week.
And I think they both listened to us very, very carefully. It's a good thing that it will be withdrawn. But we have to stop this thing where when Gabi Asari or Tredako writes something on his Facebook wall or he tweets something, that suddenly is taken as government policy and government's decision.
Nobody's taking that as government policy or government decision.
Media have taken it like as if what Gabi said is exactly what happened. And we just went through that situation when he spoke about VAT. Suddenly, everybody was agog that VAT was going to be increased. It turned out that it wasn't true.
No, in actual fact, to be fair, he didn't say it was going to. He asked a question that will you support a VAT increase for free SHS and mentioned a number of things.
And because he asked the question, it became national dialogue.
No, and
suddenly everybody was revising the budget.
The peculiar position Gabi occupies, having inside information and all that. But the issue is that the Parliament hasn't approved the deal yet, and the fact that the approval given by the executive or the president appears to be problematic, and the fact that
let me tell you what I think, all right, and why I think all this is wrong. You see, we'll go back to Kelly GVG. And Kelly GVG is on the back of Suba. All right. Now, I believe sincerely that the Suba arrangement, all right, was so fraudulent and so overblown. All right. But we accepted that as some kind of a standard for performing the contract. So it became easy when you came to do a Kelly GVG to use that as a benchmark and think that it is acceptable that you can pay somebody $1.5 million for doing what they said they were going to do in Kelly GVG. All right? So suddenly, the benchmark for performance has gone down. And yet, the value of the contract has gone up. And we were being made to accept it because we had a precedent that had been set for the same type of arrangement where performance was virtually nothing but a spreadsheet, and yet we were going to pay somebody so much money for analyzing consumer data records. Okay? Now you come to this one as well. The original Ameri deal was so bad, and we discussed it extensively in the press, all right, and waited for government to actually revoke it and do something better, and it wasn't done. Eventually it was passed in Parliament within 2 or 3 days or even less. All right. The tariff based upon which this new Ameri deal has been brought, which is supposed to be saving us $400 odd million, a desperate. So in our anxiety to accept some kind of end to doom so, we allowed a false tariff to be imposed on us, an unnecessarily high tariff which we didn't merit. Okay? So now we come back and we bring the new contract, but the new contract is evaluated on the wrong tariff, and so we are told that you are now being saved money because this new contract brings the tariff down by some 0.4 or some 0.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So that deal is a toxic deal. All right? It is cheating us out of the money that we're supposed to. But now we have become used to paying these rates. All right? We have accepted that when you fill your prepaid meter with 200 cedis, it won't last more than 11 days. That has now become our new benchmark. Okay? If government does not withdraw it, they need to find a way to withdraw that arrangement. But even more, the Minister of Energy, all right, who was audacious enough to bring a contract like that, pass it through committee, and the committee should then forward it to plenary for it to be accepted, is totally wrong. All right? And the president must act in order to be able to safeguard the integrity of this government. It is totally wrong. He must. He has to take measures. Because what Ejaku did, what Boachi Ejaku did, by bringing this contract to the floor of Parliament, is draw it. Because it is a fraud, and it is very, very bad for the people of Ghana to be allowed to accept this contract.
Very well.
That's where I stand.
Very well.
Very emotional. It's good.
So Franklin, I mean,
it's passionate about.
Yes, I don't know if well, last week you made a similar point that it was a bad deal. It should be withdrawn, etc. And you also asked a question about which local people were behind the miscellaneous company. Is that question still relevant in the situation we have today?
Well, I mean, in contracts like this, usually beneficial owners or ownership is very important. We need to know. Sydney referred to the likes of Kelmy and the rest. I don't know whether people are in a hurry to make quick bucks. I don't know. The president has been categorical that, look, if you're in my government and you think you want to make money, that's not the place for you. We haven't heard authoritatively and officially from the president.
We understand that a statement will be issued. The statement was supposed to have been issued even yesterday. We are still waiting for it. As and when we have it, we'll make our listeners and viewers know what's in there.
As Cindy again suggested, sometimes maybe persons closer to the action may be saying things, and we should be cautious how we actually interpret what they say as actually certainty. Point is, we don't know yet, but if everything we are hearing, I mean the rumors we are hearing that, look, the president was misled, is in itself an admission that, look, these things ought not to happen. But as I've said originally, I don't know what we are rushing to do with some of these deals. It's as if we are in a race to the bottom. I mean, previous deals have been done that were awkward. I don't see why you should, especially when you did campaign and said that, look, there were deals that were made that were offensive in nature, in terms of the way they were overblown, the cost and all of that. No appointee of the government should be seen to be entertaining these kinds of thoughts. Because what it does is that it reduces the president's, his resolve and his stature to deal with it. I mean, I felt bad listening to the president when he said, look, people are trying to tag me as corrupt, directly as corrupt. But I can assure you, myself and my family are not. Now, when these statements are made, it would appear as if every member of the government ought to be careful when they are making deals or signing contracts in the name of the government. Because ultimately, like we did to Mahama, we'll say that you are responsible. And that is not what we should be doing. I think it's offensive. I mean, there's nothing more to add to what Sydney has said. It's just a bad contract.
Very well.
I'm excited in the sense that at least some of the things that have been said in the past in relation to specific provisions in the Constitution keep coming up in the sense of separation of powers. So if they had not been Article 181, which states that loans, where the state wants to obtain loans from Parliament, either local persons or international persons, or enters into an international and commend the drafters of the constitution. The provision exists.
That's
as to whether we will comply with it or not is another matter.
That's true.
So if it had not been there, it would have gone through. And again, I think it's also important that we now have Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, don't we?
Yes.
Who I believe is also a member of cabinet. So before these matters leave the executive to Parliament, and I'm saying so because previously the laying of the Special Prosecutors Act bill also suffered a similar mishap, if you like, or challenge, when it had to be laid and later withdrawn because the Attorney General had not commenced some mandatory processes. It can be quite embarrassing, but I'm happy that because of these checks, once Parliament decides, as it is always expected to do, to perform these supervisory functions and to ensure there's separation of powers, by the grace of God, we will be able to block these things. So my point is that to some extent, I may not support the position that, or disagree with Sydney on the fact that the movement of it's called a deal. For me, it is just a proposal, because until Parliament ratifies it, it is, if I may be permitted to say, as useless as a non-existent document. It has no effect.
What about
in spite of the fact that even if the Cabinet executes it, until Parliament ratifies it, it doesn't exist. So on that basis, there was no deal. And that is why.
But we must question the intention. We must question the intention.
Well, the lawyers say even the devil does not know the intent of man. But that is another matter.
What about the Attorney General's official position? I mean,
I cannot say whether the Attorney General.
It's one of the four things that by law should have happened before the deal would go through.
Which one?
The official position of the Attorney General on the matter.
So it means
the finance minister.
Yes, because we see
so those things.
This was in the nature of the bill, and that is why I was talking about the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. It's in the nature of a bill, and a bill significantly low monies from the government. It is engendered by the Attorney General, and in a matter like this, the comments of the Attorney General is a requirement. So if indeed there was no such comment or memorandum accompanying this agreement by the Attorney General, then from a start it shouldn't have been laid. It shouldn't have been laid. So if indeed from the members of Parliament who are aware of this, the Attorney General's comment or memorandum, which is required by law to be attached to bills or instruments that are akin to bills, as this one I can say is, then it shouldn't have been laid in the first place. But the good thing, just to sound a bit repetitive, is that we have these checks in place, and we will just pray that Parliament should, in circumstances like this alone, at least if not in all cases, ensure a bipartisan assessment of these things, because otherwise it will come back to embarrass the very people who decided to adopt it because they think it is coming from the government. And you will not do the government any good. As for deception, inadvertence, and sheer maybe penchant to do what is not right.
Very well.
We are humans. They can happen. That is why these checks are available. So I will pray that in most cases when these things come up, they should be up and doing Parliament and ensure that they apply their supervisory role, and it will inure to the benefit of even the government, because it will not be embarrassed as this one appears to be creating some embarrassment. The good thing, the president has been frank. I also expect that.
We've not heard from him. Like Sydney
no,
said,
but I think if the comment he made that I and my family are not corrupt, I need to go back in the context. But I'm saying that. But we have heard other people saying that they should even put the minister aside and blame the president for it. And he hears things. So if it is in that context, then you should be commended for just at least coming out to say that, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't even override the position of Parliament. Parliament has the final say to either amend it, to even throw it out, to even substitute it. So they have the powers.
If our Parliament doesn't get stronger, if our Parliament doesn't become more resolute, if our Parliament doesn't really respect the criteria on which it is supposed to do evaluation, then we have a problem. You see, this thing went to the Energy Committee. It's been there. They've debated it. They've discussed it. They should never have brought it to plenary, the floor of Parliament, when they knew that the content of what they were presenting was defective in accordance with the law. It should never have happened. That movement should never have taken place. But because somebody was bent on getting it done, all right, before Parliament rose on that last Saturday, all right, Parliament even had to come in on Saturday, just to be able to clear some of these notes. And because somebody wanted it to go through as quickly as possible, and in this case I can only say that it is because the government has a majority in Parliament, it expected that it could push it through in order to make it work.
And not this time.
And it is so bad.
It didn't go through.
It's such a bad contract for the people of Ghana.
Right,
that has to be the paramount interest of Parliament.
Ameri, quickly.
Well, I think the lesson we should learn from all this is that Doom solve for now is over. we need to put aside all these exotic deals in which you become the bad power badge.
What we call the romantic.
And let's get back to the basics. I think we need the lesson now is that we need to now get back and focus on calculating what the demand growth for energy and working out frameworks and deals for demand to be met with growing supply through the normal means. You build a thermal power station, you create a fiscal regulatory environment, people build, make their little profit at the lowest possible tariffs, and we just move forward. The Ameri thing was, as Sidney correctly pointed out, was created out of our need to get out of Doomsor. All right, and I still don't know why we are revolving around it, at a time where that immediate urgency at least has died down. And if we keep dancing around things like this and coming up with silly deals, we are taking our eyes off the big picture, which is that demand is growing again. And very soon we have found ourselves in another.
Now we have to talk about
yes.
So Sami has the final word on this.
I think Sydney has said a lot about the issue. It's worse off than looking at the current deal we have, and so without going into the details, because we've had a lot of conversations about this, the deal as it is a bad deal. Now moving forward, I think it's time we all understood, and politicians more so, that legitimacy may flow from law, but it also flows from social cohesion and the public trust. And so everybody has a certain trust, which they won't have all of it forever. And that is where Sydney says questioning intent. And so if clearly there is a bad deal table in breach of law as well, then these questions of legitimacy perhaps lingers in the mind of even the base person who supports without questioning. And I guess progressively we should become a people who question without allegiance, as it were. We question and only submit to the rigor of our own thinking. And clearly I don't think there is any questions about the bad nature of the deal.
Very well. To the Ameri deal, but I mean that's not
there's a reason
necessarily.
There's a reason. There's a reason because you see the minority held a press conference, and I think Jinapok, Deputy Minister of Energy, was categorical that he thinks the president should directly take responsibility because he thinks it's a corrupt deal, which is what he is saying, and which was the point I was making earlier, that the president is taking the flak over something that shouldn't be taking the flag for.
Very well. So now we look at the NDC. This week, General Secretary Asedu Nketia said openly, said the candidates in the race, Spio Gabra is the name, I couldn't remember the initial time, Spio Gabra, former Minister for Education, former Minister for Trade, is also in the race. At least he has declared that he is running. Sylvester Mensah, formerly of the National Health Insurance Authority, has declared, indeed he has written to the party confirming his interest in the race. So he's running. Professor Joshua Alabi, former VC of the University of Professional Studies, he appears to be causing some waves in recent times. And second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, former Minority Leader, former Majority Leader, former Works and Housing Minister, former Health Minister, S.K. Bagbin is also in the race, and he's also been speaking quite a lot this week, this week. But the big one himself, John Dramani Mahama, former President of the Republic, hasn't expressly stated that he's running. Of course, he's dropped hints, and by hints I mean he said on a number of platforms, including the Unity Walk platform, that he has gone around the country, he has listened to the people, he has listened and heard their cries, and that he will not disappoint them. Whatever that means, I don't know. I don't know if the cries mean that don't contest.
Whether he likes it or not, you know.
So he said he will not disappoint them, and that many have said or have interpreted to mean that he will run.
Which is true.
So that is where we are. But this week, two stalwarts of the party, Victor Bahu, the respected, and Ken Jirasa, also a former Deputy Speaker of Ghana's Parliament, together came to say that they support Joshua Alabi because, I mean, now in the words of Ken Jirasa, Mahama is not marketable. I mean, I thought Mahama was the most marketed candidate, but he says Mahama is not marketable, and they want somebody without a baggage, and they think that with the work Joshua Alabi has done in the UPSA and a number of other things, he is the man they think should be supported to win the flag bearership contest, and that he is the guy to win the presidency or the power back for the NDC. Senior, I'll start with you. Yes, I'll start with you, but I heard a cane behind you. So, I mean, is it that because John Mahama hasn't really had any competition, you know, in respect of his running as candidate for the NDC in 2012, we also what happened. Professor Mills died, and then the party just quickly sat down and said, okay, he should be the one to go, and he did. He ran and he won. In 2016, there was no internal contest. There was a guy from one of the constituencies who tried to run, but a lot of things were said about the guy, and for some reason
the one they said was mad from
he fell along the way. So Mahama hasn't really had competition. Of course, people say he is the favorite, but we're beginning to see very formidable persons within his party challenge that.
Let me put Mahama aside first. I'll talk about him later. Of all the persons that you have mentioned,
Bagbin.
Spew's fame is simply because he was once a communication minister and an education minister.
And I think big reforms took place. Trade, yeah.
What reforms?
I mean, the GET fund was introduced in this time. The liberalization of the airwaves happened when he was communications minister, both for mobile telephony and for radio and TV. So that's quite some good job.
Were those his ideas, or were they just things that happened to him?
He ensured that they happened, so he deserves some credit in that respect.
Well,
no minister should be hailed for doing well, because per the same token, we could argue that innovations by ministers would or maybe have not been their own ideas. He supervised.
In most times, when you have a minister for a sector, the minister comes and implements or brings an idea to the table and says, "This is what I think we should do." I got a news clip. I picked up a news clip yesterday where the Minister for Agriculture was taking a lot of credit for the planting for food and jobs. And he's saying that the maize harvest this year had been so good that they didn't even have to import maize. And we've had instances in the past where presidents brought up ideas. In fact, ministers also brought up ideas. Operation Feed Yourself is widely credited to Achampo and to Benasco, who during that time brought up the whole program and the idea. Of course, Achampo is well known for saying Yenchia. So, you know, that was a profound policy statement.
Yeah.
You know, we won't pay. Come and carry us.
He's a forgotten hero, honestly. He did a lot.
He did a lot. And establishing Dansoma and all kinds of things.
Kaneshi market and all
that. Yeah.
But
so those were all, those are things that you can link to specific persons. So I'm not sure what Spio brings and what he says is his claim to fame. All right, so
it's like Get Fund.
Let's put that Get Fund. I thought the Get Fund was an NPP thing.
No, NDC.
No,
Get Fund was introduced in Rawlings' era. Was it 98 thereabout? I mean, it was certainly introduced in Rawlings' era.
Get Fund.
Yeah, Get Fund and VAT.
Yes. Okay,
but
and of course then
commodities trading.
He brought
commodities
commodity
trading.
So go ahead.
We know that he tried to collapse the cashew industry, if you remember.
So I did a blow by blow analysis of the candidates.
Very.
I'm just giving the positives and the adverse ones.
Very quickly, I'm trying to say that. I think that when you decide you want to be president, all right, we should be able to say very, very clearly, without anything, that yes, this man has the capacity because he has done ABCD and changed our society and our system in different ways.
Commander
Sugar.
Presidents don't come about from what they are doing, because it's all about winning the election.
Yes,
it's all about marketing. If not,
he's successful.
Mahama wouldn't have been president. Let's face it. I mean, I don't make this sound in any derogatory way. Somebody I know. Yeah, but in terms of actual
so that's your time you're using.
Your time.
You're using your time. I think Thomas has a lot. So Sydney, just quickly, so
when you walk through it, I don't know what Sylvester Minster is going to campaign on.
That's the NHIS.
A healthy guy.
He introduced NHIS.
He was the boss. But to be fair to him, he expanded the scheme and gave permanency to that scheme. When he came to power, the membership of the scheme was a little over 1 million. He grew that to about 8 or 9 million before he left. He set up infrastructure for the scheme. I mean, he did quite a lot to give permanency to the scheme. When he was leaving, utilization for the scheme was around 28, 29 million. And usually he's been blamed for the problems of the scheme. But to face it, the scheme is not a profit-making scheme. So once utilization grows, membership grows, cost of providing medical services also grows. I mean, you certainly need more money into the system. So he encountered a situation where now the expenditure of the scheme in terms of claims payment, etc., became more than the
man has taken over our time.
I'm not speaking like
no, he knows why he's stopping me. Go ahead.
So Sylvester went to Parliament and.
Yeah, he was in Parliament
and raised more money for national.
He was in Parliament.
He was an MP before.
One term.
Yeah, one term. Yeah.
And he raised more money for national health.
So quickly, yes. So now Bagbin.
I think Bagbin has done significantly a lot. I think from being the minority at one point in the majority, and what?
Works in housing.
He brought STX,
and he was health minister,
which didn't work. Yes, so he did something.
Okay.
So at least him we can say certainly he has been on the floor of Parliament and said many things. So he's okay. Joshua Alabi. University of Professional Studies.
Yes, he transformed that institution. And Franklin's Imani actually judged him as the best public sector official
Yes, I never forgot it. Inspirational public sector leader.
Exceptional public sector leader.
Inspirational. One of five.
Rewards good people. Always good people.
So we come to Mahama, JDM.
What you've been waiting to go?
For which I will say nothing.
Okay, good.
So all you say is you say nothing.
I will say nothing.
and that speaks volumes. So frankly, quickly.
Well, I don't know if some people are in the race to raise money for their personal circumstances.
Can you imagine?
No, because I'm beginning to think. I mean, it's a race, but I mean, that's some of the things I'm picking up. And some people are trying to raise money for other causes. And then also others want to be noticed so that they can do stuff. I mean, clearly, as you were saying, the Mahama ticket seems to be the only basic asset right now. I'm saying this at the risk of coming across as
but he's a kingmaker.
Yeah, so that's all the things I've heard. I mean, the other thing I heard in Parliament, through Parliament, was that there was a paper going around endorsing 94 people has endorsed Mahama, and Namwale is angry. Namwale said they should show in the paper. Then I said, in this paperless system, who shows?
And he's no more in Parliament.
Why are you asking for paper?
Namwale is, I don't know whether he speaks for that Labi campaign, but he's a key member of that campaign.
Yeah, but Namwale is interesting.
Is he the one who's angry because he said they didn't tell him what he was signing?
No, he's no more in Parliament.
No, he's no more in Parliament.
So he's challenging.
There was an review said he didn't know what you were saying. That was a registered attendance sheet.
So he signed.
Well, I mean,
no, but it's entertaining to think that a race of that is coming up. Look,
so I don't understand the FC. Wait, so they brought him a blank sheet of paper and said he should just sign his name.
Maybe he thought he was going to collect per diem.
But even per diem, there's a heading. Isn't there a heading that says?
I don't believe that. You should even ask, why am I writing my name?
It's ex post facto rationalization, Massa.
So look, on a more serious note, I think that it's healthy to have the largest opposition party planning to do what they have to do. It's only going to be interesting as an election because I think in 2020 there'll be a lot more to be said about this election than ever, because I expect that the NPP would have managed to fulfill some of its very, very big promises, because the NDC seems to be waiting in line, waiting in the saddle to pick on them. And people have added me to all kinds of WhatsApp platforms. So I don't even think myself of, you know what's funny? These platforms, they are like pendulums. When you post something that is critical to the government, they take you off.
So they bash you, and then later on they bring you back.
I like the fact that, look, even before the contest begins, what I see on social media is interesting. And I think the parties themselves, the candidates themselves, are beginning to take note of what they need to do in order to beef up their image. I think it will be an interesting contest, really.
All right. I mean, the two big endorsements we had for this week, Victor Behu and Ken Jirasa. Interestingly, these two people appear to, or they actually come from the so-called World Bank of the party, from the Volta region. Does that say anything about the direction this particular election is going to take, and what to call the election, and where the scales will tilt? Does it say anything?
But what about Daniel Osei?
Who is Daniel Osei?
Daniel Osei?
The ambassador to Dubai or somewhere.
The consular?
The guy who spoke negatively about John.
Yes.
Was it negative? I thought it was telling the truth.
No, I'm just saying that.
I think that.
Was he made an ambassador?
I think it was consular. I don't know whether. I think before Mahama. I'm not sure.
No, he was appointed by Mahama.
By Mahama. Really?
Yes. Okay. Isn't that what the story is?
I think the one significant point is that the election will not involve the entire membership of the NDC, or will it?
No.
Yes,
and I think that's not the case. Universal adult suffrage. I think they've scrapped it.
They are about to.
Over 1,000 delegates.
So
only 1,000 delegates. It used to be like universal adult suffrage.
Yes. So
it's not like the NPP. Oh, didn't they?
I think they do that.
They resolved on that. They are no more. They say that create a lot of problems. So I think they are going by the delegates, but obviously a bigger
expanded version.
So it's another. It's an electoral college system still.
Yes.
So I think that when persons, then these are elders or founders of the party, Honorable Beho is highly respected among the party folks. And
why doesn't he run for president?
One thing I've seen about the NDC is that they take their elders very serious. They have a number of them, and usually when major decisions are to be taken, you see all of them coming together.
Yeah, with Rawlings.
And so when elders like these honorable ones speak, and I don't think they have denied ever and making such an endorsement, then I think we have to take them very seriously. As for former President Mahama, because he hasn't formally announced positively, I will leave my comments on him for now, except to say that in my view, and this is just a light note, if the Constitution is to be specifically, purposively interpreted, then having attempted to have a second term and failed, he must not be qualified to be president.
No, but he's not exhausted his 2 terms.
No, that's what I'm saying. That I'm saying on a light note, because it means the people
you're on air.
You're on air. It means that
Thomas
it means that on the light note, he has be elected for a second term and has failed. Whether he should continue to qualify, because otherwise it will be ad infinitum. So after next 4 years, or he will be president once, and then after another person's 4th term, he said, I have left my last term, so I come again.
No, but that's entirely left to the party to decide.
But Jerry hasn't said anything yet, has he?
About what?
Jerry hasn't said anything about any of the candidates.
but if you ask me, I think Bagbin is in a comfortable lead, not the one that resulted in a defeat, but the one that may be comfortable.
Of the 5 Bagbin, you think is the best?
Well, excluding President Mahama for now, because he hasn't.
Oh, you mean he
will? I think that, and I admire him. He's very bold.
You mean he would win?
He's able. He has a chance to win.
Okay.
He's able to bring out certain key issues. Recently, he brought one under in respect of the age limit for.
Yeah, he's been quite frank.
Yes,
was he not the one who said that Parliament people take collect some things?
Well, he's checking out somehow. But so I think I really admire him. If I had a vote, I may consider voting for him. Let's encourage all the others. They should
vote for who? Mahama.
Bagbin.
Bagbin.
Mahama hasn't declared.
So, okay.
But let's have a healthy interaction amongst them, so that because we should know that any of them that they choose is likely to be president.
Yes.
But at least we the rest of us will not have the opportunity to even choose amongst them. And when they present
they choose a very good person.
They present one of them to us. We can't say that we don't want the person. We only have to choose amongst the lot presented by the other political parties or as independent candidates. So they should bring us the best to enable us also choose the best among all the persons that will be presented to us. But I wish them well.
But it's okay, isn't it?
Very well.
In one election year, didn't the MPP have 17 or so persons?
Describe them.
But they are just 5 for now, or even 4.
Very ominous.
But when you have a name like Alban Sumana Kingsford, Bagbin, it's a very difficult name to picture.
So
ASK Babin.
Ask Babin.
Is the NDC ready? Mahama, on one of the unity walks, said that the party, it wouldn't matter who the candidate would be once they're able to fix the horse. So he was at that time only interested in ensuring that they had a good horse for the race. You sure the horse is ready to win, no matter who they put there?
Well, where I find this NDC thing is going to be interesting is that this is actually a battle for the hearts of the parties. The JDM administration came representing, the administration as it was, not just him alone, presenting a so-called new face of the party. And I'll tell you that the old face of the party, the old Kedar side of thing, is going to make an attempt to win it back. That is the Rawlings side of it. All right? And quite honestly, I'm just watching. I don't know which side is going to win. But
interesting to know who Jerry supports.
Yeah, that's the thing. And there's somebody who's going to join that race. I can tell you that. I won't mention his name. Who possibly Jerry might tend.
An economy person.
Not an economy person. Somebody who represented the old Kedar system that Jerry
created back.
It's not somebody who's going to win either.
Gusitano?
Oh no, Guzi.
You think Gusitano will run?
Yes, I do. He has
Guzi hasn't been in politics for.
But so long. He's very interested.
Seriously.
We need to hear their visions for the country.
Yes, that
is very important.
All right. So,
but basically, what's going to happen to the NDC now is that, you see, for what I hear from my people within the NDC is that they feel that John Mahama has established a cult within the party of his own young Turks kind of thing. And there are people, Jerry and those who were there before, who feel that they have taken the party away from, we've all heard this for its initial principles and that. And basically, this flag bearership race is going to be a battle between the two sides. As for who will win, I can't say. You see, it all depends on what the delegates go for. Are the delegates going to go for what the party originally represented during the early days of its evolution, or are they going to go for the current attractive things,
but hasn't Jerry gained a lot more of his stature back in the party because he has been proved right with the accusations of corruption against?
Definitely he has. Jerry now has a stronger stature in the party. He's had for quite some time because the current new thing in the party took Jerry on, and eventually the election has shown that Jerry has won the party.
So it's possible Jerry will sponsor Konedu back.
But it depends also. I don't think people have done any scientific analysis of the Jerry factor by
someone came back.
I think the Jerry factor is a bit
join the party as an ordinary person. All right,
so Jerry factor
is the NDC ready for power, irrespective of who leads the party? Sydney, let's
who? Samuel. Samuel is just a risk analyst.
So he's analyzing the risk of the party.
So I wouldn't speak to the politics.
So he's analyzing
risk analysis.
Which is important.
Which is important.
Okay. On the candidates.
I think as a function of our social interaction,
and you have just about 1 minute.
Is the emergence of leadership, and which means that in any particular context, whether you call yourself NDC, MPP, whatever, the emergence of a leader is important to our whole social democracy or our capitalist or whatever means of governance we choose as a people. It is important that the competence, whether that leader is fit for purpose and whether that is in the best interest of our Ghana's development goal, is taken into consideration. And so let the politicians do the politics. But as they choose the leaders, I hope that they present the most competent, that the person who is best fit for their philosophical and political ideologies, and the one who best represent the best interest of the country.
Okay, so you just took Mahama out.
There's
no purpose. Where's the purpose?
All right, so that's it. We are wrapping up quickly, but I'm just trying to get a few of your comments you sent through. This one from a lot of them are still on the banking sector. let me just take this one quickly. Sydney is just solid. Good morning, team. This Prince from Medina. Yeah, Prince likes you. Selorm, please, some savings and loans don't allow us to withdraw money. Okay, that's from Elvis in Kumashi. Ransford Madenta said John Mahama is the best candidate that can compete in another in 2020. He had a lot of achievements which MPP couldn't have yet. Hashtag the big issue. So what will the regulator do to those auditing firms that have been certifying the financial statements of the banks? Clearly, I see some collusion somewhere. People must be punished for their stewardship. Leslie from Cape Coast. That is an interesting comment. And let me do a final one, then we can wrap up. Ikram from Waliwali says the boss of the Bank of Ghana should be very careful. If he knows that he can not do the work, he better resigns before another bank gets collapsed due to lack of supervision. So on that note, we conclude today's edition of The Big Issue, which came to you live from our studios here at number 11 Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka in Accra. We've been live on City TV and at citynewsroom.com. Our guests today have been Toma Emihie, financial journalist, Samuel Autry, risk and banking analyst, Yao Pong, private legal practitioner, Sidney Kisley Hayford, member of Occupy Ghana and a financial analyst himself, and Franklin Kudjo, president of Imani Africa. My name is Selorm Adonoo, and I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. Have a good weekend.
And if you want to
This is DW News coming to you live from Berlin. Europe's heat wave starts claiming lives. At least 3 people have died of heat stroke in Spain as the country labors under the intense heat. Forecasters warn in the next 48 hours, temperatures there and in Portugal could reach the highest ever recorded on the continent. We'll hear from a reporter in Lisbon. Also coming up, there's still no end in sight to Zimbabwe's election standoff. President Emmerson Mnangagwa is urging the opposition to accept the results, but opposition leader Nelson Chamisa is still adamant that he won and that he will challenge the outcome. And it's been called Moscow's version of Woodstock. But now several bands are refusing to perform at one of Russia's largest music festivals because the country's military has also decided to be there. Hello and welcome. I'm Amrita Chima. Europe has been sizzling under a record-breaking heat wave that's been leaving its mark in various ways. Up north in Sweden, a glacier atop Kebnekaise mountain has melted so much that it's no longer the country's tallest peak. Experts say the mountain has shrunk by more than 4 meters in July alone. Meanwhile, bathers in the Baltic Sea have been warned after thousands of jellyfish invaded the shorelines in recent days. More than 90 people required treatment on one day at the resort of Heiligendamm after receiving painful stings from these creatures. Now, researchers say the warm weather has increased jellyfish populations in the area. But the hottest place in Europe right now is in the Iberian Peninsula.